Okay, we are being called to order at 6:03 p.m. And this is our briefing session. We are resuming our meetings in person. We are in the briefing room. Citizens this is being broadcast, and citizens are not permitted into the briefing session, but they are permitted out in chamber. So we may have individuals out there watching what we have going on. Just to run down in terms of what's going to be happening tonight, if you take a look at the agenda and understand where we're going to be going with this, so that I don't want to take up too much of your time to be able to go through consent items and so forth, but just understand that the reception time, the installation of new city council members, we have 4 to go through, and so words by individuals and so on and so forth. Don't know how much time that's going to take. That's why I prefer not to delay our citizens hanging around in terms of executive session. But if everything works out, we can get out of here on time, be out there and roll at 7 o'clock, we will do so. Okay? So
we'll take the request of 5B being after the executive session.
yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And Aretha, if I seem to be forgetting to do that, elbow me through the partition or kick me one or the other. Or Mark, you can just remind me with an evil eye.
I'll kick you, I like that better.
Yeah, do that, yeah, right through Patrick, yeah, got that. All right, and one favor I would like to ask of y'all, this is the it's the inauguration of getting back together in person. It's the inauguration of 2 new city council members, having never been on council before. I would like to do the invocation tonight, if that's all right with you. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, so Aretha, turning it over to you to work through the consent items.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. To keep through it, I'm just going to read through my notes. Item 4A is an emergency generator at the Summit Pump House. The cost is $46,000, which is why, $76,039, which is why it is on the agenda. The pump house currently doesn't have an emergency generator. It was not operable during Winter Storm Uri, which denied the city 5 million gallons of water storage and put us in a water emergency. The station is on North Main Pump House, and Daniel Howe Pump House also already have emergency generators. The emergency generator will allow the city to operate Summit Pump House during a power loss, as we experienced during the winter storm, and that is item 4A.
Just a brief comment. I'm so glad to see that we are finally getting this long overdue apparatus. The end.
Thank you.
Patrick, you may have to speak up. That's the microphone, that green puppy up there. And for individuals that are not here, just so it's being recorded and picked up, a little more volume, please. Thank you.
Item 4B, designed for the Winn Avenue water line and Oriole Boulevard utility bridge water line. The cost is $70,035. The existing 8-inch water line along Winn Boulevard, Oriole Boulevard, and Fallen Weeds is in TxDOT right away and is now under TxDOT pavement following I-20 service road upgrades earlier this year. The project would allow us to construct a new water line under the Winn Avenue sidewalk, which puts the line back in city property. The 10-inch water line crossing the Oriole Boulevard aerial bridge burst due to freezing during Winter Storm Uri. The project would replace the destroyed water line with a new 12-inch insulated water line.
I do have questions. I guess when we look at I'm looking at the amounts for just a second, and we'll talk about the vendor. Dunaway, I know we've been using for a while, and with these smaller amounts, do we look at an opportunity to use some other folks as well, other than using Dunaway every single time for every project we have?
Yes, I have spoken to our city attorney and also our assistant city manager. We've spoken to Public Works to just make sure that although we've qualified a number of vendors, it seems like we're using the same over and we don't want to get into procurement trouble. So we've already had that conversation and we'll be focusing on that for the future.
Good, thank you.
Item 4C, pavement marking contract. This is a cost of $123,626. This is a first renewal in the existing pavement marking contract with Elite Striping. The Elite Striping performs all work related to thermoplastic striping, traffic buttons along arterial roads, and other miscellaneous paving projects. And so this is just an ongoing contract.
I noticed on some of her contracts, she's getting us a little bit more detailed on who the vendors are, and then if we use a local minority-owned business or whatever, can she continue that? That's some good information for us to look at as well at the end.
Absolutely.
We've done that in the past, yeah.
Yeah, we have.
Mark's just reminded me of something. It's kind of an SOP that we've adopted in procurement, that we want to make sure that we're looking at the minority and looking at a heavy focus on trying to find local. So when you give us the briefing, or when Sheila goes through stuff, make a note that in terms of we've done everything possible to find local and minority.
Yeah, on one of them, she got close to it like what she did before, so I knew she's been trying to do it.
Greg, do you have a quick comment?
Well, I saw Greg Ramey in here a second ago, but maybe y'all can help me with this. Just to be clear, this issue is about renewing a contract. There aren't any specific jobs in place right now.
No, it is renewing for another year of lease, and so some of it's planned out and some of it is as needed. For example, there's
There
Greg
he
Ramey. See, Greg Ramey shows up when he's needed. Have a seat.
What was the, I heard that you called my name, and so I missed your question on my haste to get over here. So what was your question, sir?
This particular issue about this renewal of the contract for the street buttons, this is about simply the renewal. There's nothing in the works right now, no projects for laying these out.
No, sir. But to answer your first question, yes, this is the first renewal of a contract that we awarded last year. The second part is we do have a plan for the buttons. We use the pavement markings. These typically for two purposes. One is we always have a certain portion of our markings that we redo every year. And so that's part of what the work is. And the other part is that we follow behind our microsurfacing and our mill and overlay contracts, which just started. And we redo any markings that were associated or that were, taken away when we do the micro and mill and overlay.
Thank you.
Okay, Don, you have a question as well for Greg?
Mr. Ramey, does this also include like painting of curbs and that line?
Yes, sir.
So for instance, like near Main Station, there's certain places where you see them coming off of Hastings and there's marks.
Yeah, yes, sir. So again, a good example was when we did the no parking along Oriole by Deer Chase, and we had to spray paint that curb. That was this contractor as well. Or if we have to do some crosswalks, that does it. The long line striping that you see, which is just the paint down the arterials and stuff, now that's done by Dallas County.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, move on.
Okay, and the final item is the purchase of a police car. The cost of it is $61,864. This is to replace a car that was wrecked earlier this year. The vehicle was deemed a total loss by TML, and the city received a check for $27,988 for the loss. Staff tried to locate the current model of Chevy Tahoe to replace the wrecked vehicle, but they were unable to find one. As you probably heard, the cost of vehicles has definitely gone up, and we had to order a new one from the factory, and so this is for the new vehicle that has been ordered. The increased cost is because the Chevy changed body styles for the Tahoe, so staff will need to purchase all new equipment to fit into the vehicle. The equipment for the old car does not fit into the new body style. The car was already scheduled for replacement in FY 2020. Staff is requesting to order now since the car will take so long to manufacture and fit out. The other police cars are scheduled for replacement for FY 2020 will be ordered in the fall.
Okay. What is the rough lead time on that?
It's been taking a year.
A year.
You-
So by that time, the chips supply should be back in flow, maybe.
For the,
Never mind. Okay. Jeremy, you had a question?
How much does it cost to equip police vehicles? So
which part of it is the equipment?
About half, roughly half off the cuff.
So half of the 66, or 61. So about 30,000?
Roughly.
That's new light bars, new cage on the inside, and then.
Mounts for all the equipment.
And then the computer system that goes in the MVS system.
So the 61,000 does include equipment.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's on the road.
On the street, ready for patrol.
Yeah, Greg, then Mark.
There was a reference in there to TML insurance covering some of this.
Yes.
What's the breakdown on that?
27,988 was the check we received from TML.
And this is a 2021. I saw a couple of notes in there where they referenced the 2019, but we're getting a 2021.
The 19 was.
We wrecked in 19 is what was wrecked. So we'll buy whatever the latest year is, either a 21 or 22, depending on what orders are filling.
We tried to get an older model, but we could not locate one.
So wait a minute, so we're not covered for any of the equipment at all? So sometimes we replace for the car,
Yes.
but we have no insurance or anything else for the equipment?
The equipment wasn't damaged, it's just you can't retrofit it to the new model because they changed the body style. When they get, typically they stay for many years on the same body style, and they can rip all that equipment out and it just retrofits right back into the new vehicle. But when they change body styles and you get different dimensions, then that's when you have to go out and get new.
So we can't ask TML to take care of that since we could not fit it back into there?
It's not damaged, it's just, it becomes surplus goods, it's
Yeah,
not
we can't
damaged,
find we can't find a car that way though. We can't find a car to put
You
it
can't
back.
file a claim on something that's not damaged though.
Okay.
Okay. I would like to request, if you all agree, to move item 5C to consent. I realize the dollar amount is significant, but at the same time, it is something, is an understandable item that we have in front of us.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so
No, I'd like to talk about it, sorry.
I asked to be moved.
I know, but I still like to talk about it.
Talk about it now then.
Well, let's go to it. You're already past 5D?
Pardon me?
So we're finished with we finished with 4D?
Yes.
What about that?
I did bring it.
So before on the Cedar, when we did Duncanville, we had a survey on Duncanville. Tell me a little bit more about that. Who's going to talk the survey on Duncanville?
So yes, sir, so at Daniel when we brought the design, just like this one, we had teed it up as just a replacement in kind, going back with 6 lanes, and so council at that time had requested that before we committed to the 6 lane, that we did a study for the entire corridor. The results of that study resulted in the revision of Daniel from a 6 lane to a 4 lane road, which is the cross section that's currently under construction now. And so that would be a question for you right now. The design that's in front of you is to go back in front of the post office with a 6 lane road with 5-foot sidewalks. Unless council wants us to provide additional guidance and say before we commit to 6 lanes in front of the post office, is there a different, is there a possibility that a different spot on Cedar Ridge may be more, maybe the best bang for the buck, and again, validating the cross section. Whether we still want to do the 6 lanes. Well, again, what we found on Daniel was that the 6 lanes was actually overbuilt. And so is that something you want to consider, is going back and validating before we spend $4 million if this particular spot is, where you want to put it.
So is the entire, driving down it, is the entire road needing replacement?
So the section south of Big Stone Gap is 4 lanes and it's in relatively good condition. I will tell you the part up by, we'll say between Camp Wisdom south to around West Ridge by the high school is equally terrible.
Okay.
And there's some challenges there because, we do a lot of, Cedar Ridge at that location supports a lot of pickup and drop off of students.
So we have a better bang for our money if we repair what needs to be repaired on Cedar Ridge and move down a little bit further as well. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, what I'm saying is something that council wants to consider before we commit the $4 million between Wheatland and Big Stone Gap. Do you want to do a study to see if, 2 things. One is the 6-lane cross section, what you want, is that what's, and 2 is the part in front of the post office the best location, or is there a different segment, between Wheatland and West Ridge, between West Ridge and Camp Wisdom? Because again, when we nominated the projects, we a lot of this other stuff we didn't, we weren't going to spend a lot of money until we knew a project was going to actually make the final list, and then again make the bond.
So nothing against staff. You didn't look at the entire road when you gave it to the bond committee to make a recommendation to them that we needed to replace it.
Well, we nominated multiple sections of road throughout the city, and this was the section again that was selected at the time. I will tell you that at the time we did not do a full corridor analysis. They tend to, because at the time we did not want to spend money on a street, on a road that would maybe not get selected, and also, we didn't, at the time, we didn't even know if it would make bond.
What was the cost for the study?
The Daniel study was just shy of 50 grand, and we anticipate the same for this.
But it saved us.
I wouldn't say that it saved us
It gave us another
money,
opportunity.
but it gave you an opportunity to look at it and realize some other potential for that right of way. So again, the Daniel study revealed that the volumes on Daniel Dale was only really required 4 lanes of traffic, which opened up the balance of the right of way for the bike and pedestrian facilities as well, to improve the, again, the walkability of that corridor.
Okay. I'll pause for a second because I'm about to answer the question.
Thank you. And Ms. Ring, I just want to make a comment because I've kind of been down this road a little bit, is that the bond committee did this, it was voted that way, and don't really want to stray that much from what the bond committee is and the people have voted for that was going to be the proposal.
I have a question. How much is the project budget? How much is remaining after this engineering study? And in your opinion, will there be sufficient funds remaining to complete this project?
So let me take those in pieces and correct me if I missed one of your questions, sir. Regarding the cost, I was not anticipating, subject to other direction, but I was not anticipating having to use bond funds for funding a study. To answer your second question, we anticipated our total budget at the time was for Cedar Ridge was $2 million. And right now, if I'm not mistaken, we're right in that budget. And so what we found with Daniel Dale Road is that at the end of the day, it boils down to few things. One is what, if you were to do a study, what the study would show, and if that's what you want to do. But I don't anticipate being that far off. We ended up being a little bit over on maybe on the Daniel Road project. So we'll end up having to, if there is an overage, it would come from the balance of the bond funds. Did I answer your question, sir?
Kinda, sorta.
Okay,
I'll just,
I can clarify if.
I'll just say, based on what I'm hearing you say, I'm very concerned about the amount of money available to fulfill what we promised to our citizens. So I'm concerned about any deviations from that, which would ultimately lead to cost overruns.
Yes, sir. I think at the end of the day, what we will find is that the $1.5 million that are, I would say, unassigned right now, based on Main Street, unless we revisit that, will probably get chipped down a little bit to fund these two projects. The biggest thing, and I know we'll talk about it in the fire station discussion, we hinted at it before, is we're sort of seeing unprecedented cost escalations in everything construction. And so I think that's going to be par for the course for, when we finally get the Daniel or the Cedar Ridge job out for bid, and then whatever we end up doing for the third project. But again, the priority now is to finish Daniel, get Cedar Ridge going, and then when we get that awarded, we'll know how much money is left of the bond money to bring to council and get your guidance on what you want to do with, where you want to go next.
But in terms of what Mr. Harvey has concern, and I understand it as well and agree with it, that the over $400,000 spending just on design is significant.
Yes, sir. Now the project,
And I'm looking at the scope of the project. I mean, it's wastewater, drainage, roadway, landscape irrigation, and everything to do with those 4 lanes in addition to 6 lanes. I'm sorry, in addition to making those 4 versus the 6. So the design and engineering work in this is extremely significant, especially looking at the dollar amount that we're looking at.
yes, sir. So it's roughly 10% of the total job, and I probably saw about the utility fund covers about half of the project. Because of course they've got all and they help pay for the pavement as well.
And Mayor, that's what I'm saying, instead of rushing through this, that we need to talk about this out there.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I've read through it, I understood it. You have some issues with it, I don't have a problem pulling it back, doing it out there. You have your presentation ready anyhow.
Yes, sir.
All right,
Fine,
thank you.
not a problem, then that's why I asked. We'll put it back, leave it where it is, okay? All right, we are going to then move into our briefing items. Watching the time, it's a good possibility, folks, that we will recess our briefing session at 7 o'clock or, like 5 till, move out there, open up city council, take care of the protocol stuff, and then reconvene the briefing session. But we'll reconvene it from out there. All right? I know this is a little confusing, but we're maneuvering. It's okay. All right, so first up for a briefing, get to the right page. Mr. Summerlin, council update on 2% mid-year compensation increase in year-to-date sales tax.
Okay, so for those of you who were on the council when we passed the 21 budget, you'll remember that 2% mid-year increase across the board was included in that budget. And for those of you who weren't on council, letting you know that that was part of the budget. And so the total cost for all funds was approximately $236,210. $188,000 of that related to general fund employees. And so what we promised the council at the time that we were in budget discussions is that we wanted to make this a mid-year in order to achieve two things. One, to be conservative, because we really didn't know what the recovery from the pandemic would look like. And two, we wanted an opportunity to come back before the council and update you on how we were recovering from the pandemic. And that was mostly related to sales tax. Our property tax for the prior year, we're collecting that right on target, and that budget number's not going to move much. So the real second largest number that might move was our sales tax. So that's really what we hinged that on. And so what I'm ready to tell you tonight is that we're past mid-year in terms of, physically past mid-year, but because we're 2 months in arrears on sales tax, we're at the middle of the year for our sales tax.
Quick question, just for clarification, who are not general fund employees?
The ones that are in the utility fund and the field house fund and any other fund that is outside the scope of public service, parks and rec, etc.
Right. I asked that question just for understanding, because the definition, or the not the exclusion, the parenthetical information up there for general fund employees begs the question, who are not general fund employees. That's why I wanted to understand.
Probably the best way to do it is to understand that general fund is primarily supported by property tax.
Right.
That's the big difference for us.
So this does not include police and fire.
This does
Yes,
include
it does.
the 188. Yeah.
So, I do want to go back and say, so now we brought the city manager in, and we brought the assistant city manager in. That should not include, those dollars does not include them, it should not include them, is that correct? Or 2%?
It doesn't include them in that calculation in terms of when you.
So let me be more direct there. And that means that this amount, that the city manager will not receive the 2% increase.
Only impacts employees who started after October,
Before October.
before October 1st. All other employees who started after are included.
And sorry for just
No,
directing
you're
for
fine.
you, but I
So
want
it was specifically approved for employees who started before the fiscal year. And so therefore, the city manager, as someone who started after the fiscal year, would not be included. Paul, as the assistant city manager, would be included, but any employee who was on staff before that time is included in this number.
Thank you. I really asked that for public knowledge for everybody else.
That's why I asked the question, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so based on our current sales tax collections at mid-year, we're $608,667 year-to-date as of May, above where we budgeted. And so what we're proposing is that the 2% mid-year fiscal year increase will be instituted on May 23rd. So if you look at that graphically, in the black bar, you see what our actual collections were for the prior fiscal year, year-to-date through May. And then the blue bar represents what our budget amount was. And then the red bar represents our actual for 21 year-to-date through May. So you can see that we're quite a bit ahead of budget, quite a bit ahead of where we were this time last year.
It's almost opposed to common sense, based on going through what we did with COVID and everything else, in terms of people not shopping. However, if you talk to our restaurant owners have had bad months in terms of people staying in the city and coming and going through their drive-throughs and picking up food. And so it's the inverse of what we actually thought would happen to see these numbers. Yeah, very good question.
When was the last salary increase that the employees got?
10/1 of
Prior
19.
October.
10/1 of 19.
Say again, Todd, for the mic.
10/1 of 19.
Okay. Any other questions? So that is, going back to that last bullet, implementation is scheduled for May 23rd. It's going to happen. just so everybody understands. Okay, thanks, Rich. Chief Lavigny, P25, Public Safety Radio Progression.
Peter, can you open that door?
I might have said next slide, I'm so used to that. How's everybody?
Good.
Morning, guys. All right, congratulations to those who are being seated tonight. This radio for all of us is a lifeline. And what you're gonna hear tonight is a briefing on an update on the P25 system, which is very important to us. I'm Mark Lavigny, for those of y'all I haven't met. And the current public safety radio system, real quickly, is about 10 years old. We have limited operability. We're on an island out here in southwest Dallas County. If we get outside our immediate area, then it can be very difficult to get out on the radios for mutual aid and things of that sort. Live Project 25. Back when 9/11 occurred, this is when this really got off the ground because people realized the shortcomings in public safety and their communications. And so a lot of people have been working toward this. We're kind of late in the game, but we really need this for several reasons because grants are tied to them at some point here in the near future. If you don't have a P25 system and you can certify that you do, you're not going to be able to get any grants because they all funnel through the federal and state government. And it's just important to us to be able to communicate with those with whom we'll be working in mutual aid type of situations. So it increases our interoperability, gives us more frequency, and there's price competition, digital quality is better, and the compatibility. The city and county of Dallas is currently putting up an infrastructure for a P25 system. So there's really two parts to this. There's the equipment that we'll talk about here soon, and there's also the infrastructure. Now, what we're proposing is to come up on this Dallas infrastructure so that we don't have to pay another, what's estimated $12 to $15 million, and then keep that up year to year. So the Dallas system is going to have 29 towers throughout Dallas County. There'll be two main cores or hubs, so if you do get tornadic situations through one of these hubs, the other hub will pick up. So there'll be some redundancy. There'll be security, and it's in line with the state of Texas interoperability, coordination of public safety communications.
So let me just sort of have you to go back. Let me ask the question real quick. So will any of those towers be located? Do we know where they'll be located? Particularly, I'm talking about Duncanville or southwest part of Dallas.
So there'll be one in DeSoto, and they will bounce off, I believe, one in Cedar Hill. They will not, we don't own the one here in Duncanville, so they won't bounce off of that tower, but they're close.
All right, thank you.
So last June, we gave an update to the council at that time, and to try to give an idea of what the cost would be. And on the left in the blue, we have to have dispatch, also have the congruent radio equipment that we'll need to communicate with them. So we have a cost sharing with that, and that's what that number came out to, was reported to the council last June.
For the new folks, the acronym SWRCC.
Southwest Regional Communications Center, sorry about that.
That's our regional dispatch for our.
They're based out of DeSoto, and they're dispatched for Duncanville, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill. So on the red side, you see what the outlay initially for the Duncanville public safety, which includes PD, and emergency management equipment, programming, fire station alerting, which is something these guys need so that if they're preoccupied or maybe they're even sleeping, lights flash and they're alerted, they need to get out there and take care of business. It was all included in that red side. What it didn't include, or it did include the first year subscription. I'm going to break this out for you to make it a little less confusing here later in the presentation. But it did not include years 2 through 7 of the system upgrade or user agreement, or the project management contract with Mission Central. Now, the reason it didn't include it is because they kind of added that as an add-on, and then we negotiated kind of back in for a little bit of a higher cost. So, but we got a little bit of a better cost overall. So right now, the latest proposal to Duncanville's first year capital outlay with Motorola is what you see on the left is without timing incentives. So $2.4 million. Now on the right is what you see if we can sign a contract and get a notice to proceed to Motorola by July 28th of this year. And that saves us about $378,000.
So Chief, what is the increase of this proposal versus what we're currently paying?
What we're currently paying is whatever we have to keep our radios up and maintained, which is kind of on an ad hoc basis. Over the last couple of years, it's been very minimal.
So is this in addition to our commitment to Southwest Regional?
This is everything. Are you talking about this, the cost sharing, or are you breaking out what we send to them every year for the dispatching service?
What we send to them every year right now, and how does this mesh with them?
It's above and beyond.
Above and beyond.
Go ahead, sir.
Well, you just said keywords, cost sharing. How does what we're seeing here for Duncanville's outlay compare with Cedar Hill and DeSoto's outlay?
We're slightly less, and I don't have those numbers memorized, but we're slightly less than what those other cities are paying. So there are some other, we'll call them maybe ancillary costs or subscription fees that I was talking about earlier. Subscription fees, I took them out to simplify where we are now. So the mission critical, which is new, is the $40,000 in the green there. Now what mission critical will do is, although Motorola will have a project manager for this project, our project manager will look out for our interests. And given the expertise needed in such a huge outlay of money on these radios, our city managers thought that would be best to go ahead and hire a third-party project manager for our interests.
Is that a repeated fee?
That's a one-time.
One time.
And when you say slightly less, can you get those numbers later, since you don't know about it up here?
Sure we can. And so you'll see up there in the blue SWAT radio interface. So they have the communications within their helmets and their gas masks. They just need to interface with the new Motorola system. The alarm radio interfaces. So we have alarms over in the city court as well as over in the recreation center. And those radios will need to be interfaced and brought in. So the antennas and holsters, there is not one agency, even though Motorola is the granddaddy of them all with radios. We've talked to Garland, we've talked to Grand Prairie, nobody uses the holsters that they come with. And that's just where we are. So we put that in there so that we would have those costs already there. And then the alert weathering tower or weather towers, that interfacing equipment, it looks to be about $12,000. I know the fire department's been working with our vendor Federal on trying to get those numbers in. And then so those are kind of one-time costs, but then you add in the annual P25 subscription to Dallas for being on their system. And that first year is $70,000 and then every year thereafter. But after the first year for the annual subscription to Dallas, the features of the portable radio safety features would add to that, and we think it's going to be around $19,000. What those do, so let me back up with, we currently would have the GPS without this next radio features, APX Next. But what we would have to do, these radios cost $4,200 or $5,900 a piece, and that's before program. So if these radios are lost, we don't have any way to recover them unless with the GPS program that we would have, we buy a mapping system, which is $150,000 right up front, and then after 3 years, it's $29,000 extra. Now, insurance is a big thing. We talked about it earlier with the police vehicles. So another way around that we found is that if we do these next features on a yearly subscription, we can get the cellular and get the mapping, and it comes out to a little over $20,000. You don't have the $150,000 right up front, and it's less than the $29,000 you'd have to pay in the long run. So I know that gets a little confusing. There's some features on there that we can get because technology moves so fast. They weren't available last June. They are now. These radios are going to last probably 8 to 10 years. And if it's available, it makes sense to kind of give us some insurance. So if we have battery still on a radio and it's turned on, but we lose it, it gets thrown into a suspect vehicle and they get away, we can track it and go find that radio.
How many radios?
We're looking at 195 between all three, fire, police, and our vehicles, portables, and emergency management. And then that doesn't even take into account the 14 over at dispatch for their consoles, plus that 5 for their standby place over at Grady Lane.
Now, Chief, what we need to understand as a council, this is all good information in terms of what we're going to be looking for budgeting and necessity, because as we understand it, all the cities in Dallas County are going to this. Tarrant County has already moved toward it. So if we say we don't want to do this, we would truly be an island in the emergency system, first responder system throughout the county.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Mayor, you guys have already started this way. I think Richard helped me out. I think it's 1.183 million that y'all have already budgeted.
We've already set aside everything but about 800,000 that we need to get for the one-time cost.
Right. So that's right. Reading through and understanding, you had it on that one slide about timing. The responsibility on us as a council is that we commit to this before July 28th. So your briefing session today is an education, but at some point in a July council meeting, probably the first meeting in July, I'm going to assume,
Yes.
this is going to be a motion to commit.
Want to do it when?
End of June, probably.
June.
Last meeting in June, just
Yes.
to.
Last meeting in June. We are going to be faced as a council with a motion to commit to $2,023,922. Yeah, that's the way I'm reading it, understanding what's going to be coming to us. Yeah, Patrick.
So what resource do we tap in to make up the difference? Where does it come from?
So,
You mean for the additional money that we've not set aside already?
Yes, for the additional money that we have not set aside already.
I've already planned in this year's budget, and we'll talk about that in the budget workshops, to set aside that additional funding from fund balance. And we have that available because how we ended FY20, we ended much better than we thought we would. Part of that I've talked about in my financial update. Part of that came from the CARES Act money, and part of it came from cost savings, and part of it came from our revenues doing a little better than we budgeted for.
So when would the actual expenditure take? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So we could use CARES Act money on that, or?
Well, the CARES Act money was reimbursement money that came to us for costs that were already incurred. I'm just saying that we finished FY20 better than we expected because of that CARES reimbursement. And so it's not CARES, it's no longer CARES money, it's our money. And so we have the excess fund balance to fund a one-time project like this.
We spent it according to the law, we got it reimbursed because we could, now it's ours.
Mayor,
Yes,
you asked another question.
Yeah.
So when do we have to write a check?
We would not have to write the check until we got the equipment. We would just have to sign the contract and give a notice of proceed is the way I understand it.
I believe that's correct.
And our attorney has already reviewed the contract.
So we actually would see these radios in 2022 sometime.
Yeah, so if you'll just quickly, and we're almost done here, Mayor, last
Oh, I'm
slide.
sorry.
The timeline here, and we actually backed up even before this. We've been doing a lot of work on this, and we certainly appreciate you guys, committing to it. But, so the go live for Dallas, if you look up in second quarter 22, the go live for Dallas on that system, on their system, is the second quarter. And they've told us that at this point in time, they anticipate bringing other interested cities on their system probably around August of 22. And we need about at least an 11-month lead time to get the equipment, test it, and then to program it and just start making sure we're ready to go.
So our officers will have the ability to communicate with every other agency in Dallas County.
And it gets even better than that. Not only Dallas County, but Tarrant County already has, P25 system stood up. And when Dallas County stands up, it will interconnect. And we will be able to seamlessly communicate with every agency, every fire department, and, throughout the North Texas area.
So Dallas in essence will be leasing portions of this to cities. Is that correct?
The ability to get up on their system, it will
So they'll
be
eventually pay-
subscribed.
They'll eventually pay for it because
They're
everybody.
putting in the 29 towers, we're gonna subscribe to one of those 29 towers, or multiple of the 29.
Well, no, I mean, we'll be on the whole system there. It's the.
Well, I mean, as we shoot and bounce signal, we're gonna be
Well, that's good. That's
putting
good.
those 29 towers. Yeah, Greg?
Well, just on the technology side, and I'm the last one to talk about technology, but I can't see how we can stay where we're at. And the grant issue, if this deprives us of opportunities to get grant money, and I know you all write a lot of grants, it's kind of a no-brainer to me.
That's why the council have already committed to P25. It's been, since 2019, we've known about P25. That freight train coming at us, we've known about it.
I do want to, city managers, looks like you've just been said, I want to hear what your thoughts are.
No, I was just saying it is a subscription, and it's kind of like with any subscription with the city of Dallas. Their prices could go up or could go down, but we just have to remain cognizant of it. So they're funding the big part, and what we're doing is subscribing to the system. So yes, you're right. They get to charge, but we, from a legal standpoint, in all the cities, we've been meeting and talking and really going back and forth over what the rates are and making sure that there's some type of commitment that we join today and 2 years later they triple our price. And so those are some of the things we're remaining cognizant of. We did have a meeting between myself, TC Brodnick, and the Tri-City City Manager, so the ones around here, so.
And I would ask, anytime you have information, unless the council thinks different, please jump in to tell us more, because I don't want to have to wait, have to keep asking you. I can sit on your face, but we need your information too.
And I tell you, we've tried really hard as a group to get these numbers as precise as we can. It's a huge project. Mission Critical may come in and say, hey, you know what, you don't need that. The price could come down because they're looking after our interest. It could slightly go up, but I think we're pretty close on that number at this point. Would y'all agree? Councilman Veracruz?
Yeah.
So on the fire side, Chief or Chief Jason, if you'll explain how we operate with Dallas now, how we communicate with them, and then how this would change that.
Sure. Currently, in our ambulances, we have, we used to have 2 radios. One we had to contact Dallas with, the other one that we talked with regional. We've since improved that with our digital system we have now. And we make a lot of calls in Dallas, a lot of MICU, EMS calls, fire calls, motor vehicle accident responses on the highway. And it is imperative that we have very good communications with our Dallas partners so that they understand what we're doing and we understand what they're doing. If we do not have that communication, somebody's going to get hurt. And you see that all the time where a fire apparatus is damaged out on the highway from somebody not paying attention. So it's like Councilman Veracruz said, the system will be very important to us. And speaking of what Mark was talking about, as far as like a radio, we lost a radio in a fire, could never find it. There was so much debris in that structure that we could never find the radio. That was an $800 radio. We're talking about a $4,200 radio. So, in my opinion, and Chief Levigny's opinion, it would be nice to have that GPS so we can go out there and maybe find that radio and not cost the city $4,200 to replace it. So, there's a lot of this system that is very imperative to us. And to give you another example, when we go on hurricane responses with the state, we have to be able to communicate out there. And we discovered that our guys a couple years ago, when they went with Hurricane Harvey, they were unable to communicate out there. They had to go and get radios from some of the surrounding communities to even be able to communicate. Whereas we could take our own radios, go down there, and we can operate on their interop channels, or they could even go in there and program us to be able to go ahead and communicate in there on their system. So this is a huge, vast improvement over what we have now. And me and Chief Levigny and Chief Brown has spoke about what it would cost to replace the current radio system that we have and maintain it. And like Chief Levigny said, it's about 12 million bucks. I would rather just pay the subscription and let somebody else maintain the system so that, it's always up and operating. We don't have to come to you, council people, to try to get, more funding to replace some of the system that may have broken down. So we think this is a very good opportunity for our regional partners and for the city of Duncanville.
Case in point, I'm sorry, Mark.
Chief Rowley, just one more thing that I wanted to point out. Just like on the fire side, we've gone to SWAT competitions and SWAT training on a regional basis where we have SWAT teams from Garland, Grand Prairie, Rowlett, all over. And we just can't, we're the only ones that can't communicate with our radios. So this is huge for us.
No.
And that was evident when Dan Merrill passed away, and even when that happened, there wasn't communication all the way through.
I was gonna say, the case in point is when we had the fire in February on Wheatland, in those condos. We had, what, 7 fire, I counted at least 6, I think there were 7 fire departments that responded to that fire. And without interoperability, you'd have chaos and confusion among those firefighters.
Yeah, there's
And there was police out.
3 of them that we could not talk to.
There were 3, yeah.
I don't think it's about convincing us at all. I think we all
This is
got
huge
it.
for retention.
It's a necessity, and we
we
need
have
to
to know about it, that's all.
know about it. All right, folks, it's 4 minutes to 7. I'm gonna recess our briefing session now. It's at 6:56. We're gonna go into council chambers. We're gonna resume city council. No, we're gonna convene city council. Okay, we're gonna take care of the protocol kinds of stuff. Then we're going to recess city council. And then we're gonna reconvene briefing session and pick up item 2C. Somebody help me remember how that's gonna work.
Unless you want to move it to another day.
No.
He said,
Okay.
no, I'll try.
6:56,
Gotcha.
as soon as possible. The time is 7 o'clock, and we are so happy to see human faces. It's been some time since we've been able to actually get together in person. We're looking forward to it, and tonight being a special night, we're inaugurating getting back together in person, and we're doing some special things as well. We are installing 4 council members into our city council, 2 of which are new. So it's a very special night. And in so doing, it is different than every other night we have ever done. So if you've been in here watching what's going on in the briefing session, and let me explain what's happened. We have recessed the briefing session. I have not called to order the city council session. I'm going to reconvene the briefing session very soon with a timestamp, because the oaths of office are going to be taken during the briefing session, so that when we convene the city council meeting, the new council members having been re-elected to their, or elected or re-elected to their positions, may take their seat up here as a city council person. Y'all understand that? If you don't understand it, watch the video 5 or 6 days from now and you can understand how it's operating. Okay. So, you know, it's a very cool thing, but it's detailed, but thanks to our City Secretary Kristen and putting this order all together. I appreciate it very much. So we are going to proceed with the swearing in of our city council members, and I'm going to turn the program over to, no. We are reconvening the briefing session. The timestamp is 7:02. 7:02. So, Secretary Kristen Downs.
Councilmember Harvey, if your family would like to join you, they can come up here.
I don't believe all of my family is up here. We are a tribe of many, and it was a tribe of many people of many different colors who got Patrick reelected, and we would like the people in the back to please come forward. And please don't let me have to call your name, Gail Sliger. Thank you so much for your time, your effort, your phone calls, all that you did to help him when things got rough, and they did get rough this time. We appreciate the prayers.
There we go. All right. Y'all squeeze in so Mr. Hamby can get your pictures. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Raise your hand. I, Patrick Harvey,
I, Patrick Harvey,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Councilmember at Large
of Councilmember at Large
of the City of Duncanville,
of the City of Duncanville,
State of Texas,
State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United
the
States
Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You're free to
Okay, really quickly, it's very exciting times for my family. I am thankful to everyone that participated in the process, everyone that voted for me. I am very appreciative, and as I said a moment or two ago, they are very exciting times. These are very exciting times for my family. I just want to take a moment on a personal note to acknowledge that my wife is just about to publish her first book, which focuses on her experiences as being the first African American to integrate West Monroe High School. So the book is riveting and it is powerful. And not to be outdone, my son, some of whom you know very well, is also writing a book which is called The Dream of Dark Angels, and it's quite interesting. So I just want to take this time to acknowledge and share with you the wonderful times that we're having as a family. Thank you for your continued support, and I look forward to working with this wonderful council. Thank you.
Mr. Kuntz, you're up. Come on, kids. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. You want to stand right here? Okay. You want to hold the microphone for Daddy? Can you do that? Yeah? You want to hold the microphone for Daddy? You want to hold it? Yeah, you hold it. There we go. I, Jeremy Kuntz,
I, Jeremy Kuntz,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of office
the duties of office
of Councilmember District 3
of Councilmember District 3
of the City of Duncanville,
State of Texas,
State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state.
so help me God.
So help me God. Thank you. I just want to say thank you. This is an honor, and it's a privilege for me to serve, and that's what this is about. This is what it's about for being my family, is serving this community. And so thank you, and I also want to thank my wife because she does so much, and she's done so much in our marriage in support of all of my many projects and ambitions and things that I've tried to do, and she's always been right there supporting me. So thank you. Mr. Contreras. I'm sure all y'all know, he used to work for the city, and I love messing with this man right here. And he came back to be with me.
I, Greg Contreras,
Do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duty
of the office of Councilmember District 5
of the office of Councilmember District 5
of the City of Duncanville,
of the City of Duncanville,
State of Texas,
State of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
so help me God.
so help me God. Thank you. I'm pretty humbled. First, I'd like to thank my beautiful wife for being just a driving force behind my campaign. When I was about tired of knocking on doors and making phone calls, she made me knock on more doors and not take no for an answer. So I owe a lot to her. I also owe a lot to the folks that are in the audience that came up. I'm not going to ask you to come back up, but many of you were very critical in our success, as were many people that aren't here tonight. Too many to mention, but I thank you all for that. Tonight I have my son Evan with us. He's come down from Saxe with his beautiful wife Ariel, and they have our 3 grandchildren at their in-laws' house, at Evan's in-laws' house, so they're probably not going to stay too long. And I'm hoping my daughter and son-in-law and their family down in Aggie Land, they're 2 Longhorns who live in Aggie Land, are watching tonight. They couldn't get up here and be a part of this tonight. But I've said all along that after 2 years of retirement, somebody finally asked me for the umpteenth time if I would give this consideration. And in giving thought and discussion with Karen and prayer, we decided that we had a lot to give back to this city for the 40 years that we've lived here. This is the best thing we could do to give back. So for that reason, I'm very proud of our accomplishments. I'm looking forward to working with the mayor, city manager, and the council, and getting some good things done. So thank you all so much.
Councilmember Veracruz.
Thank you. Come on, family village back in the back. I'm going to ask you to take a few more steps for me, and that's up here with me, please. You good? Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Okay. There you go. Yes.
Okay. I, Joe Veracruz.
I, Joe Veracruz,
Do solemnly swear.
do solemnly swear
That I will faithfully execute the duties.
that I will faithfully execute the duties
Of the office of
of
Councilmember District 1.
the office of
Councilmember District 1.
Councilmember District 1
Of the City of Duncanville.
of the City of Duncanville,
State of Texas.
State of Texas,
And will, to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability,
Preserve, protect, and defend.
preserve, protect, and defend
The Constitution and laws of the United States.
Constitution and laws of the United States
And of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone that voted for me, and even the ones that didn't. I hear you, but it's because you don't know Joe Veracruz yet. Once you get to know him, you'll understand. But I do want to thank my wife, Janet, especially school board trustee here in Duncanville, and of course my mom. And you know, if it's important, your mom's going to show up. And of course, I really appreciate that. But I've got nephews, nieces, sister, daughters, daughter-in-laws, grandbabies. I got everyone out here I could always hope for. But again, I thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve 2 more years. So God bless you.
Mayor Gordon, will you please come down here? Mr. Anderson, will you please come down here? Monty first.
If you're a guest with us tonight, I hope you come away with one thought. This is a family affair. We are. I don't know why this happens. We are taking this time during our briefing session to recognize our outgoing council members as well. And the first one I want to recognize is Mr. Monte Anderson. Monte has been a longtime member of our community, and during his time on council, he has faced enormous challenges. We know that, and we understand it, but Monte has been able to bring to council visions, ideas, designs, thoughts, and processes that we have never thought about before. And that's the purpose of a council. We develop things, we have diverse opinions. Do we always agree? No. And that's the health and the beauty of our council. Sometimes we're unanimous, and sometimes we're not. But even when we're not unanimous, we're still a council. We are one family. We're one team doing the best that we can for the best of our city. And that's what Monte brought to us. Monte brought to us things that, as his experience as a developer, nationwide, with nationwide renown, this man resides in our community and helped to bring us ideas and thoughts that changed the paradigm of our city. And Monte, for that, on behalf of our entire council, I thank you for being a paradigm changer for the very positive. Thank you, Mayor. So with this, you know, if you go to Monte's office, you don't see a love me wall. But this is for your love me wall. Okay. So this is a plaque For the Duncanville City of Champions, to Monte Anderson, in recognition of service to the City of Duncanville City Council, Councilmember District 3, May 21st, 2019 to May 12th, 2021. Monte, thank you so much. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mark. So I learned a couple of things. I'll tell you what I learned. First of all, I learned that I'm a better real estate developer than I am a politician. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, going back to doing real estate development, because it makes it really hard to do that when you're on the council here. And I do want to work in Duncanville, and I do plan to continue living above the rice pot. That's where I live. If you're ever down there and you see the balcony, that's where I'm at. And so I have a great quality of life living in the downtown Duncanville, and I think it's just got to get better. And the second thing that I learned, which is the most important thing, is that unlike a business, in my business, is we sit around the board table and we talk about ideas and we dream and we think of new products and we think of different ways to do things. We can do that and we can have coffee. We don't have to worry about talking with each other. But as a city council, you can't do that. The city attorney taught me that there's open meetings, you know, and walking quorums and all these funny things. And so these councils have a really hard time of just sitting around in a nice atmosphere like drinking coffee and talking about ideas and dreaming. And so I want to challenge this council to do something. I want to challenge this council to figure out a way to do it legally. There's Bob. Do it legally. Figure out a way to dream, to get together and to listen, you know, to people with ideas and to figure out a way to dream and to make the city the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Monte. The other council member departing our council is Johnette Jameson, who unfortunately cannot be here tonight. She sends her regrets, but she wanted me to pass on some words to her friends and her supporters for their great support for the time that she has served on council and for giving of their time and their energies to serving on our city council. And I would like to read the plaque that will be going to Johnette when she returns. To Johnette Jameson, in recognition of service to the City of Duncanville City Council, Councilmember District 5, May 17th, 2005 to May 18th, 2021. That's roughly 14 years of service to our city. And for Johnette as well, the ideas, her thoughts, her visions, her dreams, and her contact with her constituents was remarkable. There was so many times when she was able to say, I got phone calls, I got emails, I got contacts, and that's what serving on city council is all about. We serve our constituency. And Johnette was a great example of how to serve and how to stay in touch with her people in District 5. So Johnette, I don't know if she's actually being able to watch tonight, but as she watches this reprogramming or the video of it, when it's broadcast, Johnette, with grateful thanks from me personally and our entire city council and staff, thank you for your 14 years of service, and thank you, Johnette Jameson, for all that you've done. So at this time, we're going to recess our recess. We're going to recess our briefing session for a what should we call it? A reception in the lobby for our outgoing, for Monte. Maybe Monte's shooting out of here. I'm not, are you staying or you? Yes, stick around. Stick around. A reception for Monte and our incoming city council members. So if you would, please I invite you to go out into the lobby and have some refreshments. So we'll try to keep this to like 10, 15 minutes. I know it's like herding cats, but we'll see what we can do. Thank you very much. Okay, so a little change in the order again. We are going to dispense with the reconvening of the briefing session, which was going to have the presentation of item 2C, which was the briefing on the request for the City of Dallas to amend the interlocal agreement for traffic signal operations and maintenance. We're going to postpone that item until our next council meeting. And then we are going to close our briefing session at this moment with timestamp on that is 7:39. So now at this point, we're going to actually open our city council session. And there it is, time just changed. So we are now convening our city council meeting officially, called to order at 7:40 p.m. on May the 18th, 2021. I get to do that twice. In accordance with the order of the Office of the Governor issued on March 16th, 2020, as extended by the Office of the Governor on June 12th, 2020, the City Council for the City of Duncanville will conduct a City Council regular meeting both on video and in person beginning at 6 o'clock and now at 7 o'clock on May 18th, 2021 in order to advance public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing, in an effort to slow the spread of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. This is an open meeting, and again, if you're just tuning in to us, this is the first time we have gotten back together in person since, what was it, February or March of last year. So thank you for joining us here tonight. And if you're just joining us, we did have the oath of office taken by our city council members that were either elected or re-elected during our last election. So now sitting two new city council members, I'd like to introduce Mr. Greg Contreras from District 5 and Mr. Jeremy Kuntz from District 3. They are new to our city council, so we welcome them. In terms of, well, let's do something else first. Let's move on. If you would please stand, I will give the invocation, and following that, we will give the pledges to our flags. Heavenly Father, you're a great and a mighty and an awesome and a gracious God. And Lord, we invite your presence into our meeting tonight, into our city council, in which we desire, as city council members, to do our best to serve you and to serve our city. Lord, give us your blessing, give us your wisdom, discretion, understanding, discernment, tact, and diplomacy in all that we do. We pray, Father, that your Holy Spirit would be present with us, give us your guidance, help us to understand and do our very best. And Lord, bind us together in harmony, in unity, and in all things, Lord. We ask for your presence, do our very best to do all things for you. In the mighty and precious name of Jesus we pray. Amen. And if you join us in the pledges to our flags, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated. Moving on to item number 1 on our agenda. This is reports from the mayor, council members, and city manager. And just as a matter of courtesy, I'll remind city council members, myself included, that according to our rules of procedure, we are limited to 3 minutes in giving our reports. Please do all that you can to respect that time limit. In terms of my mayor's report, just to let you know some of the things that I've been involved in, the Dallas Regional Mobility Coalition is a meeting that I attend once a month. We had our last one, and in that we are still looking at the mobility plan for COG, the North Central Texas Council of Governments, which we endearingly call COG. It's a 2045 mobility plan, and looking ahead that far is sometimes difficult. Now, my seat on the DRMC represents the cities of Cedar Hill and Duncanville. So it's important that I communicate with the mayor of Cedar Hill on those particular matters. I also sit on the Regional Transportation Committee for the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and we had a very extensive meeting, almost a 2-hour meeting last week, and there again, we're looking at high-speed rail. Now, if you haven't seen some of the news, on Thursday, on the 21st, COG is opening up not a public hearing, but it's opening up citizens' comments on high-speed rail. And you can go to the COG website and look for that. And I would really, you might look at that and say, well, what's the city of Duncanville got to do with high-speed rail? The rail is not going to come through the city of Duncanville. But that could be a tremendous economic boom for what happens here in Duncanville and through the entire corridor for employees and people and businesses going up and down that high-speed rail corridor, which also includes a piece of high-speed rail in between the city of Dallas and the city of Fort Worth. So if you have the time and the interest, I would really invite you to go ahead and take part in that particular input from the citizens. That concludes my mayor's report. Any city council members' reports? Okay, just so you understand, we do have technology up here so that we're getting used to it again. So I look at my board here and it tells me those individuals that wish to speak. So first, District 1 Council Member, Mr. Veracruz.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that was able to come out on May 15th. It was Teacher Appreciation Week, and there were several partners, which included our council, school board trustees, some constables, local businesses, citizens that were able to come out and pitch in, hard work, and feed most every teacher in the district. All 13 schools were attended, and it was an incredible event, and that's what I look forward to is partnering with everyone. So I thank everyone for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would just like to, again, echo what Councilman Veracruz just mentioned. It was a great time in feeding the teachers as well. Just want to remind you, this coming Saturday, I have Meet, Connect, and Learn with our Economic Director, Gus Garcia, who will be my guest from 10 to 11:15. Please join us by Zoom. We'll continue to do those meetings by Zoom. And then on this coming Wednesday, tomorrow, from 6 to 7:15, I have a special Meet, Connect, and Learn with our former police chief, Robert Brown, and with our police chief of Duncanville High School. It's called Student and Policing. And so they're going to have a good conversation with our former chief and the existing chief of Duncanville ISD. So I encourage you, if you have students that just need to have a conversation around the Zoom table, as I called it, please invite them to look at my Facebook page and give them a Zoom information to join us for that police and student conversation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. This is the first time in person for our city manager, Aretha Farrell-Benavides. If you've just been seeing her video, now this is the real live.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just some highlight of events coming up. We have our fire truck pull scheduled for this Saturday to raise funds for the Special Olympics. It starts at 10 a.m. in the West Senior Center parking lot. Thus far, we raised over $23,000 for the Texas Special Olympics. Teams consist of 12 people, and the entry is $300. If you are interested, you can call 972-780-5027. Categories are public safety, first responders, adults, otherwise, and youth. Events will go rain or shine, except if lightning comes, they will delay it, but it will still continue. In-N-Out Burgers will be there on hand for participants and spectators. Another event is within the City of Duncanville. The VFW Post 7843 will be hosting the annual Memorial Day ceremony and at Memorial Park. This event will happen on May 31st at 10 a.m. Please join us to remember the military service members who gave the ultimate sacrifice for freedom that we enjoy. Another thing that's been brought to light that we are working on now is the D.L. Hopkins Jr. Senior Center will be opening with a limited in-person hours beginning Tuesday, June 1st. Hours will be from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. The congregate lunch meal program will continue with curbside service only, and participants are still required to order 2 days in advance. Capacity at this time will be capped at 50% occupancy for the room. Staff will be performing additional cleaning and sanitizing services throughout the day. Additional information will be disseminated at the Senior Center members this week, along with the appropriate advertising through our regular activities. With the governor's new mandate, masks will be recommended but not required. Finally, we'd like to acknowledge the accomplishment of our city's finance department. The City of Duncanville has been awarded the GFOA Distinguished Budget Presentation Award budget for FY 2021 budget book. This year, this is the highest form of recognition for government budgeting. In order to receive the award, a government unit must publish a budget document and meet program criteria as a policy document, as a financial plan, and as operational guidelines, and as a communication device. Special thanks to our finance director, Mr. Richard Summerlin, and the finance team, especially Ms. Jennifer Ote, budget analyst, and their work and dedication, as well as Ms. Tia. So thank you to our finance team, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, City Manager. Moving on to item number 2 on the agenda, proclamations and presentations. And this is something that I will be doing. We have I would call it a program here in the City of Duncanville that is unique to us, and it is the recognition of what we call champions of our city. Now, champions of our city, we are called the Duncanville City of Champions for going back in our athletic history for championships in sports. But championships are more than just sports, because when you look at business, you look at real estate, you look at media, you look at the arts, you look at education, we have champions in our city across a broad spectrum of those particular activities of what people do for their livelihoods. But tonight, we are going to focus on athletics, because very special things have happened very recently in our city. So the first thing I would like to do, first person I would like to recognize is Coach Reginald Samples. Coach, if you'd come up, please. Coach Reginald Samples is the head coach of the boys, well, I guess we only have boys football, don't we? Football team for the Duncanville Independent School District, Duncanville High School. Now, I've gotten to know this gentleman off the field, not on the field. And in those times when I've been present, when he has addressed groups and we've had some discussions, I learned that there's more to the heart of this man than how to win a football game. He is so concerned with his players. He invests in his players. He takes young men, some of them difficult cases. His goal for every single person, every single young man on that team, is to develop in them a sense of responsibility, a sense of integrity, and to give them character. This is his goal. That's his objective. And if they win, all the better. But number one, he invests in the lives of these young men. And for that, Coach, that's why I want to recognize you as a champion of our city. Reginald Samples is hereby named as a Duncanville City Champion as head coach of the Duncanville High School varsity football team. Coach Samples is not only a superior coach who has earned state and national recognition for his leadership, but more importantly, he invests in the character, maturity, and personal growth of his players. His investment of time has long-lasting effects on the futures and destinies of young men. Coach Samples is a great credit to the Duncanville Independent School District, the City of Duncanville, and himself. Coach, we recognize you. Thank you. Bless you. And with that, we'd like to present and with that, for your Love Me desk somewhere, a medallion from the City of Duncanville, City of Champions. The next champion of the city that we would like to recognize is Coach David Peavy. Coach? Here's another coach who takes winning as second in his life. First, men, young men, character. And building in that, what has he done? This year, something very, very special. Took our men's, I gotta say men's, took our men's varsity basketball team to a state championship. Well done, sir. And with that, I'd like to read. David Peavy is hereby named as Duncanville City Champion as head coach of the Duncanville High School boys basketball team. Coach Peavy led the boys basketball team to winning the 2021 state championship. In addition, Coach David Peavy was recognized at the University Interscholastic League 2021 Coach of the Year. Coach Peavy is a great credit to the Duncanville Independent School District, the City of Duncanville, and himself. Coach, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor, City Council. It's an honor for me to receive this award. It's an honor for me to be the head boys basketball coach. We've got some great young men, but none of this happens without the support and the leadership of our city and of our school district, and I appreciate this.
Thank you, Coach, and a medallion for you as well from the City of Duncanville, City of Champions. Thank you. Oh, yep. Is it on? There we go. And I'd also like to recognize, I don't know if you call them, these guys as boss, but we have with us Athletic Director Dwight Weaver. Athletic Director, please stand. It was with Dwight that I coordinated getting Coach Sam. You know what it's like to try and get these two coaches in one place at the same time? It's not an easy job. So thank you, Athletic Director Weaver, for helping me with that and being here tonight. It's an honor to have you and Coach Samples and Coach Peavy. Thank you very much. Okay, another change that we're going to make to the agenda tonight, based on the time that we've spent thus far. The original plan was to reconvene the briefing session and then present, what was it? Item 2C, which is a briefing on the request of the City of Dallas to amend the interlocal agreement of traffic signal operations and maintenance. We're going to postpone that item to our next City Council meeting. So with that, we will be moving on to item number 3 in our agenda, which is citizens input. Pursuant to Section 551.007 of the Texas Government Code, any member of the public has the opportunity to address the City Council concerning any matter of public business or posted agenda item. However, the Act prohibits City Council from deliberating issues not on the public agenda, and such non-agenda issues may be referred to city staff for research and any future action. All persons addressing are subject to council-adopted rules and limitations by law. At this time, 2-minute comments will be taken from the audience on any topic. To address the council, we do have one individual who wishes to speak. Two individuals who wish to speak, and one written comment that I will read to enter into the record. And individuals, please recall that there is a 2-minute time limit. You will be timed, and City Secretary Downs will inform you as you get close to that time limit. So the first person I would like to call up is Mr. Roger Sashington. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Sashington is online, so bring him up.
He's not there? Okay, Mayor, just read his comment.
Okay, his comment is in regard to the conversation/negotiations between Dallas and Duncanville about the traffic signal at Clark Road and Summit Park Drive. Roger Sashington, no address. So I presume that we will probably be hearing from Mr. Sashington when this item comes back up on our agenda. The next individual who wishes to speak is Mr. Grady Smithy. Mr. Smithy. And please give us your name and address.
Grady W. Smithy Jr., 1806 Cedar Hill Road, Duncanville resident since 1950, when we had about 230 people here in town, 330 people here in town. I can't bring that far, Mark. I'm not going to get you. Congratulations, Madam City Manager. Congratulations to all the ones of you who got reelected and got elected for the first time. You don't know what the heck. The ones you guys got elected first time, well, maybe you do a little bit because you've been around this thing. But Jeremy, it's going to be a heck of a learning process. Good luck to you. I came to talk to you about my favorite subject, which is roads. You know, when the 22 years I spent on Duncanville City Council, I brought $82 million worth of outside money into Duncanville to match the money that we put up to build the road system we have. And we got almost through. But what didn't we finish? We didn't finish one road. And you know which one it is, your district, Mark. The far south end, in the east end of town, we've still got, we've got to get that road done. And we should be able to get that road done because the school district has given us the right of way from Cockrell Hill Road all the way up to where it drops off the edge. But where it drops off the edge, all we have to do is buy about 2 trees worth of right of way up to that point, and we will have all the right of way. If we get all the right of way, then the city of Dallas, when we basically give Dallas County the right of way that we have. And there's enough right of way there to do two main lanes and a bicycle lane. So you got, and I know that DeSoto's going to do a bicycle lane on the side of the road that we got built for them. And Dennis Schwartz got built for them 30 years ago. I had no idea it was going to take 30 years to get the rest of this stuff done. I don't have another 30 years. I have to remember, I'm 78 years old. I've lived longer than any male member of my family. I ain't going to be here if I have to wait 30 years to see this road done. Please get this road built. It can be done. There's money available to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smithy. The next individual who has submitted comments asked me to read them, and I will do that now at this time. This is from Mr. William B. Self, 710 Timber Trail, Duncanville, Texas, 75137. And I will be reading verbatim from his input. I do not understand the connection the city has made between carports and outbuildings with the new city zoning ordinance. I am told by the city that I must apply for a variance to build a carport. An application for a variance indicates one is varying from ordinance. Why must I vary from an ordinance to put a carport on my home? The new zoning ties the square footage of the carport to the square footage of the outbuildings. An outbuilding and a carport are 2 different animals for 2 different purposes. A carport is there to protect one's vehicle from Texas storms. It has a roof and 4 columns. It is often tied to the existing home structure to provide personal protection navigating from the vehicle to the home during a rain event. A carport has no doors or walls. An outbuilding is there to extend one's storage capacity. It has walls and at least 1 lockable door It is typically freestanding. My wife and I have reached the point we are ready to provide funding for a carport. I inquired about permitting and found the requirement for a variance. I am told it requires a $500 variance fee for a $3,000 job. I do not know what to say about that. It doesn't make any sense at all. The carport and the outbuildings need to be treated as two separate issues. I understand the variance cost is to be an issue discussed at the council at the meeting of 18 May. I urge the council to reduce the variance to zero, nada, nothing. I urge the council to do away with the requirement of the variance for a carport. I urge the council to treat the carport and the outbuildings as separate issues because they are separate issues, separate goals, separate structures. They are not common in any way and should not be tied to one to the other. That concludes Mr. Self's comments. Moving on to item number 4 is the consent agenda. City Secretary, if you please read the consent agenda items.
4A, consider a resolution approving the terms and conditions of a professional engineering services agreement PSA-21-021 for engineering consulting design services for emergency generator at the Summit Pump Station with Dunaway Associates LLC and the proposed amount of $76,038. 4B, consider a resolution approving the terms and conditions of a professional engineering services agreement PSA-21-022 for engineering consulting design services for the replacement of the water pipeline along Winn Avenue from Oriole Boulevard to Winding Trail and the replacement of the water pipeline located in the utility bridge over I-20 adjacent to Oriole Boulevard with Dunaway Associates LLC and the proposed amount of $70,035. 4C, consider a resolution authorizing the first renewal option of IFB-20-018 for pavement marking, supply, and installation services to Elite Striping LLC, Cedar Hill, Texas, and the unit amount bid for an estimated amount of $123,626. 4D, consider a resolution awarding a bid for the purchase of a Freedom Chevrolet through the Tarrant County Commissioners Interlocal Cooperative Purchasing Contract bid number 2020-174 and the amount not to exceed $61,864.
Thank you, City Secretary. The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. McBurnett. Is there a second? Second. I have a second by Mr. Cooks. Please vote. Now, for you folks in terms of recollection and for the new folks, your voting pad is on your right, and to vote yes, you click to the right. To vote no, you click to the left. Please vote. Thank you very much. The motion is passed unanimously. And for folks, please click it back to the neutral position. Moving on to items for individual consideration. For information, we are going to have some movement of these items in individual consideration. We are going to take item 5C and take it to the end of our items, and we're going to have, pardon me? We're taking, oh, I circled the wrong one. Hold on a sec. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're taking 5C and moving it up. And we're taking 5B and moving it down. And we're going to do executive session prior to our discussion on 5B. And we will do that at the end of our items for individual consideration. So first we have under items for individual consideration, item 5A. Consider amending ordinance number 2390R, amending the master fee schedule for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 by amending said master fee schedule by adding a fee for non-residential specific use permit, Subpart 11, within the planning/building inspections master fee schedule as set forth on the attached Exhibit A. Mr.
Thank you, Scott
Mr.
Thibodeau with the,
Thibodeau.
yeah, with the Public Works Department. I just want to say it out loud. It's my first Public Works Department I've been able to work in, but specifically the Planning Division within the Public Works Department.
And for folks in the audience, Mr. Sky Thibodeau is our new planning
Yes, sir.
person. No,
Yes,
what's
sir.
the official title? Planning?
City Planner.
City Planner.
Yes, sir.
There you go. Okay, go ahead, Sky.
All right, this will speak to the gentleman's statement before. I think Mr. Self was his name. Going back to really the adoption of the new zoning ordinance back in March 2nd, 2021, we knew things would shake out really with the adoption of the new ordinance. It always does when you go through that process. So this is one of those things that kind of shook out within the first month that I was here. Something that came up, you know, that Mr. Self had a sense of urgency about this subject matter, so we felt it important to bring forward to you as well. So the new zoning ordinance now requires an SUP for the following residential accessory uses: carport, basketball or tennis court, short-term rental, and wind turbine. And currently, the zoning change for the SUP application, the fee is $1,150. Mr. Self, I believe, brought up a $500 charge. When he came to the permit desk, there is a line item in the master fee schedule. It's item number 10. In discussing the price and what we should charge for this whole thing kind of came up after that discussion with him. You know, what is a fair price? We saw the $1,150 charge. Let's talk about this internally a little bit. And so that's where he got that number from. So as mentioned, as you can tell, multiple residential property owners have been deterred from applying for a carport due to the cost alone, the $1,150 fee, that when you look at the SUP charge, that's what it is. Little research that staff did along with talking to the folks who did visit the counter, the average carport does cost about $2,000 to $3,000 to construct and install. So factoring that potentially, you know, your application fee could be a third to a half of that cost. You know, we felt this needed to be addressed. So we are proposing to differentiate between residential accessory uses and SUPs for non-residential uses. The fee for the non-residential SUP would remain at $1,150, and a fee for residential SUP is being proposed at $125. This is actually in line with what a applicant would pay to have a case heard before the Zoning Board of Adjustment. The reasoning behind that is these cases, when we do get them and we bring them forward, the amount of staff review, staff time is really a lot like a ZBA case. The exhibit would be something like a plot plan, maybe a spec sheet showing the construction of the carport or whatever it may be, the tennis court, basketball court, which doesn't require too much time to review. It's just a matter of taking the time, sending out the notices, getting the signage out on property, and going through that process. A summary of the changes. So number 11, to highlight, it used to say special use permit instead of specific use permit. I believe that was the old moniker for SUPs, was special versus specific. So we're updating that to be compatible with the new zoning ordinance. And then we're adding a new line, line 12, for a zoning change for specific use permit for residentials at $125. And then if you looked at the master fee schedule, we have a whole comment that specifies exactly what that means. And staff is recommending approval of this change, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Thibodeau, for a very succinct and excellent presentation. Also want to compliment you and the staff for listening and responding to customers and their concerns about this particular ordinance. And because of that, I think that what you all have done is reasonable in the circumstances. So I will be supporting this. And also the $125 simply just covers the cost of you all's time and effort of doing that, so that there's no markup written in that at all, I would think. So I will be supporting this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Any other inputs?
Yes, Mayor.
Oh, Mr. Cooks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the information that you've shared. I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Self. He called and discussed. Would you share, though, he mentioned in his letter, his briefing, carport, and then he said out, he used the word out, carport and outbuilding. I'm not sure what he was in reference to, but can you share the difference between an outbuilding and a carport for him? Because he seemed to think we have them in the same category.
Yeah, those are all accessory uses. Really, I think what he's talking about is the maximum allowment of square footage. I believe it's page 44, 45 in the zoning ordinance that talks about accessory uses. Certain lots at certain sizes are capped at certain, or at a maximum of square footage for accessory structures, uses, that kind of thing. So I think that's what he was referring to.
Okay, so we're not, so we know they're not the same, and you wanted to make sure he knows
That's right,
they're
yes,
not
sir.
the same. All right,
That's right.
thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. McBurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Thibodeau, I want to echo what Mr. Harvey said as well. Thank you for the presentation. And with that, Mayor, I'd like to make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. McBurnett. We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I had a question.
Okay, but there is a motion that's been made. Just need to take the second. Mr. Harvey has made the second. And so, Mr. Contreras, you have a comment, please.
Okay. Mr. Thibodeau, just to be clear, these cases will be taken before the Planning and Zoning Commission, correct?
Yes, sir. It'll go through just like any other zoning case. It'll go to planning and zoning within about 45 days of their submittal. 30 days after that, it'll be before your group.
Okay, that was my second question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. We do have a motion on the floor to approve, and we do have a second. Please vote. Thank you, council. The motion has been approved unanimously, and thank you to Mr. Self, and thank you to our staff for accommodating those inputs. So as I stated, we are going to now move to item 5C. Consider a resolution approving the terms and conditions of PSA 21-031 for engineering consultant services for the design of Cedar Ridge Road, street reconstruction and subsurface utility improvements from Big Stone Gap Road to West Wheatland Road, professional services contract with Dunaway Associates LLC, and the proposed amount of $417,035. Mr. Ramey.
Let me move forward here.
There you go.
Again, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Greg Ramey. I'm the Public Works Director, and I'll be talking with you tonight about the Cedar Ridge Street and Subsurface Utility Reconstruction Project. Also with me in the audience tonight are our consultants from Dunaway as well, in case we have any further questions from them. So again, the request tonight is your approval of this contract for Cedar Ridge design. In the background, so again, the agreement for this is the design of the water, wastewater, drainage, roadway improvements to Cedar Ridge from Big Stone Gap Road to Wheatland Road. Like a few other locations on Cedar Ridge and throughout the city, this roadway has deteriorated beyond the point of our normal maintenance operations, so a mill and overlay or a microsurfacing. As you can see, the funding, this job will be jointly funded between the bond project or bond funds that were previously awarded and or approved by the residents of Duncanville, as well as from the utility fund. And you see the breakdown there of the design costs as well as the estimated construction costs split out between the bond money and the utility money. Again, Dunaway Associates is based out of Fort Worth. And just again, it's been a while since we briefed in person, but several years ago we went and went through an entire selection process for all the engineering firms that do work on behalf of the city. And Dunaway was selected as one of those 5 engineering firms. And again, those projects are, in terms of the scope of the project, we compare that scope against what their specialties are, as well as their performance and other jobs with the city when we make those assignments of future design work. As it said, Dunaway previously did the Daniel Dale Road design, which is currently under construction. So I just want to orient you again to the project map. Over on the right-hand side, you see just an overview of the location. For for this job. Wheatland is at the north and Big Stone Gap is on the right. It's right there with CVS, and you see the post office. And so what is currently at Daniel Dale is a 6-lane divided road with a 5-foot sidewalks. You see sort of the cross section up on the upper left picture, and then on the bottom left picture is just a photo of what that looks like on the ground. And again, under the current design contract, it's what is proposed is to replace the existing pavement and cross section and replace it with the same thing, but brand new. And again, we're recommending approval of this contract with Dunaway for the Cedar Road design, subject to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ramey. Any questions from council, please? Yes, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just be curious, Mr. Rainey, do you all have a methodology in which you evaluate the performance of the engineer on your projects, and do you do that project by project, or just kind of give us some insight on that?
Sure. Yes. We do go back and look at how the contractors have been performing. So the contractors or the firms that are not responsive in terms of providing proposals or not responsive in terms of delivering their product in a timely manner do not get, I don't know if the right word would be preference, but we keep that in note when we go and look at other firms. A lot of our firms tend to be stronger on the water and wastewater side and versus the road construction. That was why we originally gave Daniel Dale Road design project to Dunaway, which was actually their first job that we awarded them, if I recall. And because they did a great job on that road construction job, we in turn gave them this job. What may not be as evident to the members of council is we do have several other designs that are below the 50,000, and so those are also given out to the other companies, Burgess and Niples, IEA. Again, Criado's got a few jobs, and then RJN received 2 jobs so far, again, based on performance and specialties.
Mr. Cooks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Greg, would you also share with us, when you went through the process of making, sharing with the bond committee of the recommendation of Cedar Ridge, what process did you guys go through in making that recommendation, and tell us more what came to mind when you were doing that?
Sure. One thing I do want to preface, and I will tell you that when the bond project the bond initiative first came through the city, and we started standing it up and identifying projects, I had been here just a few months. And so now looking forward after 4 years here, I have more insight on different things like that. But so when we went and made the selections of multiple locations throughout the city, we were looking at pavement condition indexes. We were looking at vehicle trafficability, and we nominated multiple projects, of which this was one of them. And so, we could have asked for, pretty much all of Cedar Ridge, at least north of Big Stone Gap, and come out okay, just as well as any, Daniel Dale or any of the other ones that were nominated. And so at that time, we nominated those projects basically, again, based on pavement condition index and trafficability, but not much more than that at that time, because again, going into the, I guess, bond project nomination process, I was trying to be very careful on, I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a lot of analysis and extra studies and recommendations on projects, that would not make the initial cut by the bond committee, nor, without even knowing if the bonds would make. So that was sort of how this project got nominated, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. I would make sure I commend the bond committee for, again, all of their hard work and making sure that, as you brought this to them, to consider. But with that, would you also share with us what learnings you got from the Daniel project, from having a second look after, because that was also a bond committee recommendation,
Yes,
which was
yes,
great.
sir.
Share with us some of your learnings from that.
Sure. So again, the Daniel Dale Road project from Main Street east to US 67, again, was another project. And as I mentioned before, that project I was a lot more familiar with, because even when I first got here, we had water main break, water main break, water main break, all in the same section, and so I was definitely more familiar with that one. But again, what happened at the Daniel Dale Road job was we brought forward a similar design, which was again a replacement in kind project, and a study was requested on the Daniel Dale Road corridor to re-examine that corridor and see about the feasibility of bike and pedestrian facilities along that corridor. So we did a feasibility study, and we looked at traffic counts today. We looked, and then looked at them in the future, and the engineers came back and said that the volumes along Daniel Dale, even when we look out into the future, did not require 4 lanes. And as you know, Daniel Dale in a lot of places has a small sidewalk, in a lot of places it has no sidewalk or and no way to get a sidewalk right now. And so what we found again was the volumes were such that we could reduce Daniel Dale to 4 lanes and provide improved bike and pedestrian facilities throughout the corridor, again tying into the 4-lane road with bike and pedestrian facilities to the west in Dallas across Clark Road, as well as the proposed 4-lane road with bike and pedestrian facilities that DeSoto is planning on constructing as part of one of their 7th call projects on their side of Daniel Dale Road.
And I'm not advocating to reduce. I just want to get that background information,
Yes,
or for the
yes,
public. Would you share how much did that study cost us? And
that study was under $50,000.
Under $50,000. So it was a good learning for us.
Yes, sir. I think it was between like 40 and 50. I don't remember the exact amount.
When you talk about how do you compare the recommendation that we're making, that the bond committee made as well? How does it fit back into that comprehensive plan when we talk about Cedar Ridge as well? Because I'm not sure if we gave them that comprehensive plan when they did it. They probably did, but how does that fit in when you look at your today?
If I remember correctly, I timing wise, and I'm having to go back in my memory, which doesn't seem to get any better. But around the same time was a comp plan was approved. And I don't recall if the comp plan was approved before or after we went through the bond nomination process.
Okay.
But in the comprehensive plan, the meat of the opportunity area is actually north of Wheatland, where like Aldi and Tom Thumb Shopping Center, mainly between Wheatland and Westridge is the comp plan.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, just by being here 4 years now, I'm also aware of the challenges north of West Ridge, between West Ridge and Camp Wisdom, with that pavement as well. And again, there are challenges with the high school because one of the lanes supports the high school pickup and drop off.
So I think you mentioned in the briefing room about there are some parts that we identified, or that you identified on Cedar Ridge that was better than the other. Can you share that information again? And
the best part of Cedar Ridge right now is actually south of Big Stone Gap, which is a 4-lane concrete road. Once you get to Big Stone Gap, everything north of that is asphalt.
Okay.
And that is the best part, that best condition road. And again, Daniel Dale in front of the post office is also a very bad road. It's very evident that the pavement has become depressed due to different compaction where we put in the utility lines.
so the recommendation right now, based upon what we've seen in the past, is you have some good road that we need to repair according to plan, but you also have some road that may not need it. Is that what you're saying?
No, sir. I guess sort of where, and I don't want to put words in your mouth or misstate, sort of where we were going with the conversation, I believe in the briefing session, was before we spend the $4 million on Cedar Ridge between Big Stone Gap and Wheatland, given that there's challenges on the rest of the corridor, would council want to do another study to see if that was the optimal location, or come back to you with some other options for at least for your consideration, or again to approve the project as it's presented to you tonight, which is to replace the part of Cedar Ridge by the post office with what use a newer version of what is there now.
So you could come back and you could actually come back and give us some 3 options that still goes with probably pretty much within the recommendations, but give us 3 other options versus just that's one option.
Yes, sir. What I would think, just our conversation, I see 3 road segments of approximately the same size and scope, which would be between Big Stone Gap and Wheatland, between Wheatland and West Ridge, and between West Ridge and Camp Wisdom. They all have their own challenges, and and I think what I would say is we could come back and say we've done the study, and again, here's what's going on with Cedar Ridge at location 1, Cedar Ridge location 2, and Cedar Ridge location 3. Here are the challenges. They're all roughly the same, and then that way I feel we would be making the most informed decision. I think that would be so that you would have some more information to consider again before we make this investment.
And then last question for me is, what about how do we pay for that? How do we pay for the one from Daniel Dale getting that study?
I would use the street money that we have in the street O&M would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. Those are my questions.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you. My question is it's more of an observation than a question. But at any time during this study of this wear and tear of Cedar Ridge, have you seen numbers that indicate, especially at peak hours, the number of cars that travel southbound, say at 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, that are coming from I-20 and actually traveling through our city, ultimately going into Cedar Hill?
In the Cedar Hill off of Cedar Ridge?
Yes, they're cutting off I-20 and then taking that route to circumvent the backup traffic on 67.
I would tell you that we would, as part of the study, we would be taking traffic counts all along the corridor. What would not be, and we could definitely see, but what another indicator would be on how we would know that they are pass-through drivers, I guess maybe that would be a good term for it, versus residents. I just don't know how we would be able to differentiate. What we can do is, again, at least know total volumes and where people are and determine if a particular segment of the road gets more traffic than other segments. And again, I think that would be something we would come to you and be part of any information we would say is like, this segment has this many people traveling on it. Unfortunately, we don't discriminate on who drives on our roads. So, you know, typically, again, we are focusing on just overall volumes because, again, wherever they're going, they are using that road along with a whole bunch of other people and
All right.
going from there.
Thank you. It's just a question. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
Any other inputs or questions from council? Mr. Kuntz.
All right, thank you. Could you give just a brief summary of the utility improvements that are involved?
Yes, sir. So as we talked about, the water and wastewater utilities that are there are part of the replacement because they're sinking down and they're bringing the pavement down with them. So what we're talking about in this particular case is upsizing the water lines, replacing the sanitary sewer lines, actually incorporating additional water lines so that both sides of the road have access to water. We still have some undeveloped properties on the west side. Let me back up on that map, sir, that might help. So we still have a lot of undeveloped properties on the west side, and currently the water lines are supplying the properties on the east side. So we would have another water line on the west side so that when we develop the remaining properties, they would not have to bore under all the pavement. And that's really a brief summary of what we're doing, and as well as we would be taking that opportunity to upgrade the drainage infrastructure as well, sir.
And is any of that like a emergency situation where it absolutely needs to be done?
Well, typically when we are doing these jobs, we tear up everything and replace everything so that all these infrastructure typically have the same lifetime. And my preference for, you know, to get the maximize the maintenance and use of the road is to limit cuts. So when we are taking down the pavement, we take care of everything so that we don't really have to be back there for another 40 years.
Is there any, as far as the whole corridor, the Cedar Ridge corridor, are there any sections that really do need improvements utility-wise?
Well, there is no part of the road that would need it any more than any others. And so the case with this one here, sir, is we pick the section of pavement that we want to replace, and then we will replace the utilities underneath because that's the opportune time. Now, contrasting to that was the Daniel-Dale Road project that's currently under construction, where we consistently had failures and failures and failures in the same small section of pavement, which you know, indicated that we had some significant water main problems as well as the resulting pavement problems because we just had to keep cutting into the pavement. And so again, that's what we're doing is when we do a total pavement replacement, we take care of everything so that we don't need to be back.
I'm done.
Mr. McBurnett?
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to just put in the comment or reminder is that this is part of the bond package, and this is what the bond group brought in, and this is what was voted on. So I just wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
Going back to Mr. Contreras?
I think it's a great idea to have water availability on both sides by having mains on each side. I've seen projects that have been abandoned because when they incorporated the cost of boring or cutting, especially where a fire sprinkler system was required, it just wasn't feasible to go on with that project. We have a similar situation, as you're probably aware, on North Cedar Ridge, just south of I-20. There's a couple of vacant properties up there that's the main reason they haven't been developed, is simply the cost of bringing water from the Dallas side over to the Duncanville side. So I think what you're doing down there on the south end is going to be more attractive for businesses to come in.
Yes, sir.
Going back to Mr. Cooks?
Yeah, Mayor, if it's time, I'd like to make a motion that we approve a study of the Cedar Ridge Road to be brought back to us that compares back to a combination of the Bund Committee as well as our comprehensive plan for them to bring back 3 recommendations back to us. So the motion is to agree to the study that Greg talked about. So that's my motion.
The resolution that we have before us is to approve this contract for $417,036. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking for.
I'm asking to make a motion to have this contract, to have more time to study this contract based upon what Greg just shared with us.
So you're asking for the scope of work to be modified?
I'm asking for the study to be completed.
Mayor, that item's not on the agenda, so you'd have to vote this item down with the instruction.
Yeah, that's
okay. Good, thank you.
That's what I was trying to
Gotcha. All right, that's fine.
Explain in terms of what we have before us versus what we're looking for. The scope of work of what we have before, what you're asking for is different from the presentation of the resolution we have before us to approve this contract.
Okay.
If you want more information or a different scope of work study, that's going to have to be something separate to be brought up on a separate agenda item in another meeting.
Thank you. I'll make a motion that we don't approve this item.
Thank you very much. There is a motion to approve item 5C. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Harvey. Please vote. The motion is passed with Mr. McBurnett and Mr. Kuntz negative. Okay. Knowing that we are going to do executive session and be discussing item 5B, and knowing that we have before us also a staff report on discussion on city-owned properties, I think it's best that we go ahead and take that discussion on city-owned properties and take the executive session and the discussion on the fire station to the very end of our city council meeting. So with that, we are going to move to item 6A, discuss city-owned properties. Mr. Garcia.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Gus Garcia, Economic Development. Mayor and Council, this is my first time up here, so I'm going to work this this pointer here. So Ms. Downs, basically, I advanced the slides with this pointer here, I'm assuming. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Again, good evening. Gus Garcia, Director of Economic Development. Mayor and Council, what I did was it was requested of me to prepare a listing and a presentation on all the properties owned by the City of Duncanville. As you see from the presentation before you, the City of Duncanville owns owns exactly 70 city-owned properties throughout the city. The DC EDC owns 29 properties throughout the city as well. The total value based on the Dallas Central Appraisal District was $41.2 million. So those obviously are the appraisal values by the Dallas Appraisal District, not the actual market value of what these properties might be. I informed the council that the market value could be significantly less or significantly more depending on what the buyer will pay for the property. What I've done is I've broken them out into separate categories. The first category for you is District 1. So as you can see in District 1, we have approximately 8 parcels of property of various degrees, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where these parcels are and the type of parcels that they are. So as you can see from the area in blue, that land and improvement includes what the land is valued along with the improvements on the property. So in District 1, we have approximately 1.58 million of property in that district. In District 2, we have approximately 6.95 million of land and improvements, which consists of approximately 20 properties throughout that district. In District 3, we have approximately 8.1 million in land and improvements. Improvements would be a building usually, or some sort of other structure. It could be a water tower, it could be service facilities, it could be outbuildings, it could be any number of things. As you can see from this particular side, we have 29 properties that belong to the DC EDC, and that you'll recognize as being the railroad flats. We also have additional property, additional 12 lots that are owned by the city. And again, some of these properties do include city-owned property that might house a municipal building, might house a service center, etc. And some of them may be vacant lots. What I've shown you here is a combined facilities example. So as you can see from this particular piece of property, we have the D.L. Hopkins Senior Center, and we have the police property, which is highlighted in green, the first slide, which is identified as 319 East Wheatland Road. You can also see from the listing and the schedules I've provided, you have another property, which is 201 James Collins Boulevard, which is the Library and Recreation Center. So on your listing of properties in the district, these would come out as different properties, but as you can see, they're identified in the appraisal district as one particular area. So I just did that for illustration example so the council and mayor could identify those. So I also categorized them by zoning. So each council member and the mayor, of course, could identify what land and improvements are in their district by zoning. So what you have here is in District 4, all those properties and what their corresponding zoning is. So in District 4, you have approximately land and improvement of 21.3 million, and in District 5, you have approximately 3.16 million. And so these are the zoning parcels that I mentioned. So downtown district, and there's various zones for each one. You can see here that in the downtown district zoning, we have approximately 6.39 million in value. And again, these are different parcels with different particular structures. As you can see, general office, land and improvement, we have approximately 20.1 million in property. Land, office, and retail zone, we have approximately 1.6 million. Residential single family, we have approximately 11.1 million. Now this is a little bit interesting because even though it's a residential single family, if you look at it, you'll see that a lot of this is parks and water towers. We actually do have some vacant lots that would be intermingled within the city of Duncanville, and they might be vacant lots. So here you see planned development. We have approximately 1.1 million in planned development. What's interesting about this particular property, if you see the area highlighted in green, you can see railroad flats. Those particular lots, there's 31 of them, are identified at a value of $6,500 or $6,500. I would venture to say that's not really the market value, that's what the appraised value is at, so they might be significantly more. So please keep that in mind when you're looking at the land and improvement value of 1.1 million. That might be skewed to be less than what the actual value is. So total values based on what I just mentioned is scattered throughout the city. As you can see the map that I've provided. It's highlighted in blue. We have approximately 41.2 million in value. Improvements is 24.0 million of that. is buildings and structures, and land, it's about 17.2 million. And again, some of that is the EDC property. So what I've done here is I've just provided a pie chart showing you what based on the value and the zoning, what the value would be as based on those, the presentation before you. So approximately 49% is general office and retail, which we would expect because general office and retail is going to probably carry your highest value. What interesting is that family values, areas and land that's in areas that would be zoned as single family, it's approximately 27%. So that's just for illustration purpose for the council. And you can see here that the Railroad Flats property is multiple properties. Approximately 31 lots are in a kind of a just a area all by themselves. So 31 lots in one particular area. And that was the property that I mentioned that was at $6,500. So I took it further to have vacant land uses that are really unidentified, that haven't been designated for development by the council. The Economic Development Department has a number of properties that have been designated for future development that we're trying to attract business to or possibly develop with development partners or even sell. And so the land before you right now is going to be an example of some of those properties, some of those vacant lands, some of those vacant properties, and some of those parcels that would not necessarily be something we could sell. They may not have uses and they may be restrictions to them, but I wanted to provide them anyway. So what you have here is a list and a schedule of some of those properties. There's approximately 17 properties that are vacant, that are actually unidentified, and these are some of those examples. On the left, you have the Duncanville Fieldhouse, and you have a vacant parcel right next to it. The use of that would be undetermined. We don't have an actual use identified for it. And on the right, you have another vacant parcel in front of the Duncanville Fieldhouse. Here, you have a lot. It's at 4 Belmont Place. It's a lot that's inside a neighborhood, and there are, in my understanding, some restrictions on that lot, but it's an example of some of the vacant lots we have that the city owns. That particular lot, from what I understand, may not be buildable, and there might be some restrictions on that particular lot, but it is available, and we own it. Here you have another parcel on Jungle Drive. I'm not aware of any restrictions based on what I've been able to ascertain, but I do know that it is on septic for what I've been able to, information I've been able to gather. But this is an example of another parcel that we own. Here you have 602 and 607, 606 Caven, excuse me. And these two particular properties, the ones on the right that are highlighted in green and in red, are landlocked. And that's another example of property that we have. 534 Meadow Glen, which is on the right, in a triangle shape that's highlighted in green, is being used for drainage. We also own that property. And again, these are just examples of the type of property that we own. 507 Wheatland, this is another parcel that doesn't have any real use, and we haven't identified any use for it. And you can see on the next picture, 500 Oriole Boulevard is another example of property that finding a use for it may be problematic, but we don't have an identified use for that particular property. Here you have 110 West Magnolia Lane. This particular property is landlocked. We don't have an identified use for that, whether it be to sell or to utilize or to possibly market. 223 Woodhaven Boulevard, which is on the right side of the screen, I believe on your right. It's another property just north in the northern corridor. I believe that's District 5, but that was an old impound lot. So we don't have an identified use for that one as well. Here you have an interesting property that is located off of I-67, or Interstate 67. As you can see, a bird's eye view of the property next to a shopping center, and you have a creek that goes through it. This is 10 Mile Creek, I believe, that it crosses right behind the field house, which you see on the larger picture, the white top building, or the white roof building. What's interesting about this property, I feel, is that you have another parcel right next to it. You see our property, which is highlighted in green, and then you have an empty vacant lot, which is highlighted in red. What I find interesting about this property is it's off our frontage, and it's a possible opportunity for particular development, but it's not identified in our comp plan as an opportunity area. So vacant land that has what I call semi-identified uses, these are properties that we don't have an area plan identified or that we don't have one established. What I mean by area plan, it's just a natural progression from our comp plan. It would have a more specific use or kind of an idea of what we potentially would use it for, that we could market it for. I've identified 9 parcels within the city. You can see them here listed. And I'm going to give you the next slides, which you can see where I identified them. One of them is the property on, I think it's, let me give you the exact address. This is what everyone refers to as the old Toyota property, which we purchased. You see the area highlighted in red. I have a smaller picture below where it says Callis Project, Public-Private Partner. We have the K&G building. Now that's not something we own. We own the area that's actually highlighted or outlined in green. But this could be a master plan development or a plan development that would include the K&G property. So this is an opportunity area. We don't have a final decision on what we want for this particular property, whether it be a entertainment center, commercial property, potentially a hotel. There's a number of developments that could fit in this property, being that it's right off the expressway. Here is a property identified often as the Ladd property or the Hamilton property. As you can see, the value right now for the appraisal district is $534,330. We don't have a identified or specified use. I know I have heard some recommendations, but we don't have a final decision on what we're going to do there. We're looking for developers to give us some idea, but this would also be a candidate for an area plan where we could have specific use that the council would want. We do have a lot of interest in this property as well as the one I just identified, which is, I say, is a Toyota property, although I don't know if that's the right name for it, but people are referring to it as that. But this is the Ladd property or Hamilton property, depending on who you speak to, and this, I believe, is off of Daniel Dale Road. Adjacent to this property are 2 parcels that are identified as well, one right down the street from it. The only reason why I identified these, even though these could be classified as unidentified uses, I included them because they're in close proximity to what would be a planned development of the Ladd or Hamilton property. And these are in key areas in relation to that development or potential future development, and they may carry some significant value for future development. Here you have Railroad Flats. You can see these are all properties highlighted, well, everything's highlighted in green, but you can see where there's 31 lots. This is another potential catalyst project for the downtown area, whether it be a public-private partner, multifamily, remote workers, potentially food trucks, a brewery, retail, restaurant, office, co-working space. This is another property that we don't have final direction on, but certainly we could need some guidance or direction on that. Another property, which is the Chamyville property, we own that property. It used to be a car wash. So on the left is the before, where you had the car wash highlighted in green, and on the right is after, highlighted in red. We do have significant interest on this property by developers. We just don't have direction from council on what we're going to pursue. 2 properties that we own. One is the county tax building, which is right outside this building on Wheatland and Main. And across the street is the old library, what some refer to as the Eon building. But you can see on the both pictures before you can see both buildings. I've just separated them and highlighted each one in green, although they look, if you look at them, depending on how you look at them, they're actually north and south of each other, not east and west of each other. So we don't have a final direction. I know that city manager and assistant city manager are working on potential uses for these particular properties. We're seeking guidance on that as well. Here we have the Duncanville Community Theater, which we own. We'll note that the lease expires August 1st, so that's something that will be coming before the council on what will be the future use of that particular property. And to the right of that is 306 West Camp Wisdom Road. As you know, we're currently, we do own that property, and I think we're in the process of moving the new fire station to that property. And the attorney can talk to you further about that. I believe there's some discussion on that particular property or the adjacent property. Any questions?
Yes. The statement that you have made in your package recommendation, staff is requesting feedback from City Council if they would like to sell these properties or retain them. Mr. Garcia, I think that statement is extremely broad brush. It's impossible for us to act on it. The information you have provided to us is enormous. And in terms of what I personally would consider an action item, in terms of what this council may like from your office and your present position, is that what you have presented to us is you look at these properties and prioritize the sale or development of those properties and how you're going to attack and approach developers to work on those properties. I'll go back in my business experience where we would have a priority schedule set up. We would have $3 million in a bucket to do, let's say, renovations or priority projects of repairs and maintenance. I'm just going to look at R&M, not brand new construction. But people, you know, throughout a 16-state area would come to me and they'd say, this is what I want to do, boss. And I'd have like 4,500 projects. So we'd sit down as a staff and we'd look at those and we'd say, okay, out of those 4,500, give me the top 20. And out of the top 20, give me the top 5. Those are the 5 actionable ones out of the 4,500 that we received that we actually do something with. And so looking at this list of 70 properties the city owns and 29 properties the DCED owns, and this statement here that you're looking for us from council tonight after going through HIS, do we sell or retain? How do we do that? It's impossible. That request to this council is not actionable. I don't believe it's possible unless somebody on this council can look through what we were just being presented with an enormous amount of facts and information, which, by the way, we have never seen it done in such a better way before. It is exceptional. I commend you and congratulate you on the work that's gone into that and the presentation of it in terms of breaking it down not only by zoning but by value, by district. Congratulations. Never seen it before that way. So what does it do to me? I can't speak for the rest of the people sitting up here, but what it does for me is it raises millions and millions of questions like, I can't do that. I am looking to you, Mr. Garcia, to tell us what do you think are the best. Let's let you pick the top 5. Is it the Ladd property? I mean, or is it the DMV across the street? Which do we go after? Which do we consent to your priorities in terms of what you want to do best for our city? Because one of the things that we as a council have always discussed when it comes to properties around our city, and I know you've only been here days, you can't go back and listen to what we said, but you know, I've become accustomed to this phrase that we have highest and best use, which goes back to the comp plan, which was, I think, 2017 when we approved that puppy. So to come up to us with this enormous amount of information and this statement, City Council, please tell us which ones we want to sell and which ones we want to retain. I can't, Gus. I can't. I don't know if anybody else sitting around here can. So what I'm asking, and I can't, as I said, I can't speak for anybody else, but what I'm asking is, I'd like to hear from you the top 5 that you think you can actually accomplish between now and 1 year from now. I'm laying that, you know, that mantle of leadership and that in your expertise, and I'm saying, come talk to us, Gus, and say, these are the ones, council, that we can actually move on, we can do something with, and this is the priorities. And, you know, if I'm not making myself clear, pump me, you know, ask me, you know, just because this is what I got to do. I got to look back at my experience and what you just did to us and say, council, please advise you whether we should sell or retain the properties. Those properties you just presented to us. I can't do that. It's just too much. It's just too much. I think that we as a city and we as a council would benefit so much from your expertise. I mean, I've looked at your resume. I know where you come from. I know what you can do. It's demonstrated here. Now I'd look to say, okay, Gus, you've seen all these puppies as well. Which ones do you think we ought to move on? And those are the ones you bring back to us individually. Okay, like the DMV across the street. You said city manager and assistant city manager are looking at those possible uses. That comes to us as a single item. Belmont Place comes to us as a single item. We can't look at these things in mass. We have looked at, what's a railroad? We've looked at railroad flats since I got on council in 2018. And DCEDC, and Mark and I were on DCEDC together before we got on council. We talked about railroad flats. We couldn't figure out what to do with them. And now you're bringing them to us, those 31 properties. We still don't know what to do with them. What do you want to do with them? What do you
Well,
want
I
to
have
do
a
with
lot of
railroad
ideas.
flats?
I have a lot of ideas, but as with anything this important would require consensus by
Yeah,
city manager and assistant city manager, the public works.
You know, so.
All the team, I would say.
Please understand where I'm coming from. That, as I said, the information you have presented and the manner in which you've done it and the compilation of that data, never seen before in such an exceptional manner. It's just the conclusion you reached in the package that we read. You want to know whether you want to sell or retain those properties. That's what it says. That is that's such a 50,000-foot question when we're down here really is ground zero looking at everything you presented to us.
That's a great point.
Okay, so you know, I love what you've done. I just don't know what to do with it. Okay, so I see that.
Well, I was on that first, Mayor.
A lot of people want to talk.
It was
so-
an item that I put on there, so I'd like to speak first, Mayor.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Mr. Cook.
All right, thank you. First of all, Gus, let me commend you for the information that I asked you to put on your report today. Great job. I'm not going to bust a balloon because I think I asked you to put it on there for a reason, and the reason was for us as a council to look at it. So thank you very much. And Mayor's right. We hadn't looked at it from this standpoint, and that's the reason I asked for us to look at it. I'm not going to use that one statement and say, I'm not going to crucify you on that one statement about what should we do with it. Really, we should know. We have not. It's been some years, and that's why I asked you to bring it to us. So thank you for bringing it to us, because I wanted us to know as a council what we needed to give you some directions in doing as well. So Mayor, I'm not going to jump on him for that one statement. I'm going to still commend him as you did in one of the other statements for bringing it to us.
My jumping on him is a professional critique of information presented to City Council
Well, let me
in writing.
I'll go ahead and finish, but I didn't, especially in front of, that is something we will normally do behind the scene, but I want to thank you for bringing it to us. Let me ask you about the 27 single families. That was one of the reasons that I wanted to see where we stood, of how many properties we own, or what we could do to make recommendations on single families. I don't think we give you the commission to go and tell us what to do. I think we come back and give you some directions of whether how do we get this information that you've given us so much, and how does the council come back now and narrative that information to give you something to work with. So instead of you giving us a commission of working, you finding the first 5 or 7, I think we turn around and give you, based upon the information we have, some directive, such as what do we do with the 27 single-family residents that we own? What do we do with the Toyota property that I wish that we could find another creative name versus Toyota property before your time, that we need to, as a council, to come up with a new creative name to help market that property. And any properties we have in the city, how do we go forward in coming up with a great development, future look name versus the old Toyota building or the old car wash building or the land that we talked about. So thank you for bringing this. This is probably this is exactly what I asked for, more so for the council to go back and look at this information at a future time. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Mr. Koontz.
Thank you. First of all, I just need, maybe it's just for me, some clarification, the difference between a city-owned property and then something that's owned by the Community and Economic Development Board. So,
Sure. So the Duncanville Community EDC is in itself an own entity based on statute. It's governed by a board that's appointed by the council. The council is the governing unit, so they appoint, but it was created through a referendum by the voters to utilize a half-cent sales tax. So it's in itself a separate entity, a corporation, sort of like a local government corporation. So it's from a legal standpoint, and the city attorney can probably answer in more clarity, but it's identified as a separate entity, even though it's governed and the governing unit that controls it is a separate board, which is appointed by the council.
so if it's owned by the Community and Economic Development Board, it's not actually owned by the city. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And then.
But understand the legal relationship between the Economic Development Corporation and the city council. The EDC is subordinate to the council.
Okay.
So you can't say one doesn't work with the other. They're married.
Right.
It's just that the ownership is a legal separation.
The EDC could not sell or dispose of property without the council's final approval.
Okay.
Even though they own it as a separate entity and it acts as a separate entity, it's controlled by the governing unit. The board is controlled by appointment. The board is appointed by the governing unit, which is the city council.
Okay.
Which ultimately controls what they do.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And just, you know, I for one, you know, the information has been very valuable to me because there's a lot of things there that I hadn't thought about and I hadn't considered. As far as, you know, what to do with properties, there's a property off of Cockerel Hill, and it's right next to the KA. There's a strip mall there, and there's a couple of businesses that just recently got set up there. There's a property right next to that the city owns. I can't remember the.
That's a car wash.
It's a vacant lot, I believe. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's it. Now where that KA shopping mall or whatever it is now, was that? Do you know if that was previously a city-owned property that we sold to a developer?
I do not know the answer to that question.
That was previously with the old Callaway's nursery. That was owned privately, it sold privately, and then developed privately.
Okay.
Is the public picking that up? You wanna? So it was a previously owned property by the Callaway group. Is that what it's?
We got it. It was owned by, it was a private transaction. Callaway Properties owned it and they sold it.
It was owned by the Callaway Nursery. They went out of business. They sold it, and then the gentleman bought it and developed that. So the city was not part of the Callaway, the KA shopping center that you were mentioning, sir.
Okay. I guess, you know, some of the properties is, you know, we think about these things and what to do with some of these properties. That shopping center is, you know, I know there's some kind of dollar store there, of course.
That's correct.
There's some kind of beauty salon, and already they've got burglar bars up on all the windows, and you know, there's already, you know, criminal activity that's taking place there. And so I guess, you know, as we look at what we're going to do with properties and selling them to developers, you know, as far as your expertise, that it's not always a good thing to sell just to make the money and to get the taxes off the property if the property actually brings you know, just the attractiveness of the community down itself.
I'll agree with that. I mean, every property has its unique character or its unique it's a unique asset. It all depends on what the council would want. As far as the EDC marketing it or the city marketing it, we would want direction on what type of developer we would want in there. And I don't want to call it a partnership, but it certainly would be something we'd want to see develop. But again, we're running into some legal questions on whether or not we can control what someone does. We can only take them at their word, and then ultimately they get a permit to approve what they want to do. We can only recommend or we can encourage, but I'll let the attorney answer that question, whether or not we could force somebody to do something.
Thank you.
Is that all? Mr. McBurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Garcia, I want to thank you again for the compilation. You did a nice job, as everyone has stated, so I really appreciate that. And the big thing that I just want to say to you is that I think when citizens see that, they just want to say, well, our taxes are high, what can we do to put something in there that we can reduce our tax rate or that can help offset. So that's just all I really have to say about it. But I want to thank you because you have hit the ground running on this thing, and you've done a really nice job since you've been here. And so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Contreras.
Gus, I'm going to echo what everyone else has said. I've been an employee with the city for a long time before I retired 2 years ago, and I've never seen such an extensive listing of our city-owned properties. as you put together. I think it's a valuable tool we'll use in the near future and further out than that. So I appreciate the identification to the extent that you have of each one of these properties. I think it's an important starting point. To the mayor's point about maybe honing this down to a more manageable number by priority, is that something that's in the purview, within the purview of the Economic Development Board to study that, to take that on as a study?
I think the EDC would certainly want to make recommendations on what would be the highest and best use, as the mayor mentioned earlier. With regard to the purview, if you're asking my personal opinion, I would say that it would be a combination of the EDC as well as the city manager's office to determine whether or not we sell it.
Well, it's not so much about the sale as much about giving us back some ideas about which ones, let's say, which are the top 5 that are, in your estimation and from your background, appear to be the most marketable, that we're getting calls on, or that you see the potential of those properties being higher than the potential of some of the other properties that we have. And to identify 5 or 10, and then give us some ideas about some proposed uses, so that we can focus in on a few manageable opportunities rather than try to look at the whole thing.
Right. I would say if I had to make a recommendation, I would ask that, I believe in building a consensus amongst the staff, whether we came together as the Public Works, Planning, City Manager's Office, Assistant City Manager's Office, and all those that would have an input in how it would impact the city, whether it be planning, drainage, utilities, all of those things, and then come back with a recommendation to the council.
Okay,
for
is that,
eventual sale.
Mayor, is that something that we can come to some consensus at some point, that would be our response to his request tonight?
Sure. You know, it's what I said. We are not the experts. You are. And I'm looking for help, Gus. Give me that help. You know, in terms of where do we go? Which one of these do we go after? Do we, you know, give us that 5 or the 10 and the 15, and even prioritize those and say, council, here's your best opportunities, and this is how staff looks at it, and feed us your expertise. That's what I'm looking for help. You know?
And I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I would, again, I would gather everyone's input and then come up with a final recommendation.
Yeah, because we didn't even know about it at first.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, one more
go
point,
ahead.
if I may.
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask the city manager, would you kind of take this on to, you've heard our comments, and work with the Economic Development Director to maybe bring us back some information?
Yes, and I want to start by saying this is a council requested agenda item, specifically requested like this. Although the conclusion at the end may have stated we are asking for you to make a decision, we're actually asking for direction in which you're giving us. And so Gus has been here less than a month. And within a month, he's pulled together something that is superb compared to anything I've seen. I don't fault someone who's been here less than a month for coming up with a recommendation that does not necessarily chive with what we were asking. But we were asked to bring this information to council by council. And so what we would like from you is direction on exactly what the mayor has given and each of you have given is, if you want us to continue down this road as a priority for our new economic development director, that is what we will do, and that's what we are asking for. We're not asking you to tell us what to sell and what to do with it, but we wanted to make sure that after being identified to us that there were a number of properties within the city that could possibly be developed, we wanted to specifically know if that is the direction council would like him to go. And we do apologize for the wording at the end, but what we want more than anything is direction if this is something to pursue or you want us to go in a different direction.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey. Are we done, Mr. Contreras? Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Gus, I'm very appreciative of the work that you put into presenting us this information. As I have received it, I'll share it with you. I look at this as a beginning of a process in which you working cooperatively with the city manager's office and with the Economic Development Board would go through a process and bring back to council a listing of those properties which appear to have the highest desirability in the market in terms of development, and based on you all's collective wisdom, what type of development would work well in this community based on that cooperative analysis. It would be helpful to me moving forward that would be the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veracruz.
Yes, sir. Mr. Garcia, thanks again for all that information. What I'm going to recommend is we take a bus tour, maybe. If you pick about, I don't know, 10 properties, ones you think, or any 10, let's take a bus tour, tell him what we think, tell us if he thinks it's possible, is the first thing. The second thing, I'm going to get with some folks in my district with the things that he's laid out, very easy for me now, and kind of get with them and go, hey, what do you think about this? And after the bus tour, after we get information, so that at least we can lead them the right way. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Garcia, I didn't jump on you. And I take exception to what Mr. Cook said I did. I did not. Yes,
Just
I'm a little
sounded that way,
emotional. A little emotional because I take literally what staff puts in our package in black and white. And when in black and white it says, after seeing this presentation, you want to know which properties we should sell and which ones we should retain. If you were sitting in this chair, how would you answer that?
The same way.
Thank you. I'm not jumping on you, Gus.
I didn't think you were.
I just got to let you know that we as a council can't act on that sentence. But what you've heard is what we'd like. We'd all like to see some, give us those 10 properties. And yeah, Joe, I was actually thinking of saying, let's go pick those 10 properties, and after you've stirred it around with staff and you come up with some ideas and the highest and best uses and what you want to pursue, let's take that bus tour. And you show us which ones that you think are really the ones that are actionable for us. So I just can't emphasize, you put something in black and white, I read it that way. And that's how I got to respond.
Understood.
Because legally, if it's a resolution, that's how we have to do it. And so when you put something in a city council package and that's your recommendation, it says staff recommends council direction on which properties to sell or retain. That's what I can't do that. So if I got a little emotional, I apologize, my sincere apologies. But I just got to help you understand that, and as the city manager said, that one sentence is a non-starter. Just help us in the future. When you put something in writing, that's what we have to act on.
Understood.
Because our city attorney, if we start going off track and we move off point and we lose our latitude, we become illegal in our discussions. So that was, just help me, help us. I think we've got some good consensus here, what we're asking to do. Talk to EDC, talk to your staff. Joe's gonna talk to constituents and take us on a bus tour of those ones that, yeah, council, these are the ones that I, Gus Garcia, say we can move on for the best, highest use for our city.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, just one last comment, if you acknowledge. I'd like to thank Gus again. Gus, this was not meant as I asked you to bring this to the council. It was meant to give us some directions and some thought. So again, thank you very much for doing it as a request, as a council request from me to the city manager to put it on here. And Mayor, I appreciate you now telling Gus you didn't mean to jump on him that way, but he explained
you
it well.
said jump on. I didn't say jump on.
Yeah, I did say jump on, and I brought him down. It brought him a level down. But we worked together, so thank you very much for explaining that, and I appreciate you doing this as we requested through the city manager for me. Thank you.
We love you, Gus.
Love you too.
He gets, see, we give him this sugar, he brought him down.
All right.
Brought him down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now, here's where we have some adjustment in terms of what we're going to be doing tonight. We are going to go into executive session, and we're going to discuss executive session, and when we come out of executive session, we are going to be discussing item number 5B. Okay? So I have to read something to make this legal. Let's see. City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code to seek legal advice from the city attorney regarding cause. Is that cause or case?
Cause number.
Cause. Number CC-21-00211-E, styled City of Duncanville versus Tommy Winn et al., filed in the County Court of Law Number 5, Dallas County, Texas. And so we're going to recess City Council. The timestamp is 9:25. We are reconvening City Council regular session at 10:02.
You want to sit there?
It's you.
You're doing the presentation.
Okay, moving on to item 5D. Take any necessary action as a result of executive session. There is no action to be taken as a result of executive session. We now move to items for individual consideration. Item 5B, consider resolution selecting exterior design option 2 for the new fire station number 1. Chair will entertain a motion to approve. Mr. McBurnett has made a motion to approve. Is there a second? We have a second from Mr. Harvey. Roll call vote, please. Did you get them?
Yes.
Okay, roll call. City Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Veracruz, for or against? For. Councilmember McBurnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Coots, for or against? Sorry.
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Cooks, for or against?
Against. Okay, for.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Contreras, for or against?
For.
At-large Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Thank you. The motion is passed unanimously. And with that, we will adjourn our city council meeting at 10:03.